Hi, good evening. I am calling this meeting to order. This is a Redmond City Council study session held on Tuesday, April 28th, 2026, commencing at 7:01 p.m. All council members are in attendance. Mayor Burney will not be joining us tonight. We have 4 items on the agenda. The 2027-2028 budget process, departmental budget overviews continue. We will begin with fire and then have public works tonight. We will have a land use and zoning map amendments for 6900 188th Avenue Northeast, the 2025 legislative conformance business improvement and fences zoning code amendments, and council talk time. So for the first item, the budget process, departmental overviews, we have tonight fire and then public works. Deputy Director of our Finance Department, Haritha Nara, will get us kicked off. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Council. Councilmember Stewart, you have already said whatever I wanted to say, so thank you. So today we have, this is our third session, our third group of departments who is going to do the department overview presentation. So the first one we have is fire. So I'm going to hand it over to them.
Okay, thank you, Haritha, and good evening, Council. Again, I'm Fire Chief Adrian Shepard, and I'm joined this evening by Deputy Chiefs Ami Varel and Chief Jim Whitney. We're pleased to present the Redmond Fire Department 2027-2028 budget overview. Our goal this evening is to outline our recent progress, key accomplishments, and our future direction. As we review the details, let's see, there we go. As we review the details, our mission remains central: to compassionately, proactively, and professionally protect life, property, and the environment. Actually, we're still on the same slide. Yep. Every dollar in this budget supports our commitment to the residents of Redmond and Fire District 34. The members of the department live this mission every day. Whether they're responding to an emergency, conducting a fire inspection, educating a classroom of students, or showing up at a community event to connect with the neighborhoods they serve, this budget reflects that commitment. The modern fire service extends beyond firefighting. We operate in 6 key divisions: fire operations, emergency medical services, including our basic life support, advanced life support, and our mobile integrated health, emergency management, fire prevention, support services, and the fire administration. This scope highlights that you're not just funding a fire department, you're funding a comprehensive public safety system.
Our proposed baseline budget is $92.1 million, and that covers 168.5 FTEs. This is a 6% increase over the current adopted budget. Fire and medical operations is our largest area with 150 FTEs, which increases 10% to $77.2 million, reflecting the full impact of 4 FTEs added in the last cycle and the consolidation of ALS overtime and supplies for transparency. The 22% decrease in administration reflects a realignment, not a reduction in capacity. Those resources have been shifted to our emergency operations and a new emergency preparedness and recovery budget plan offer that you'll see in the new budget, which formalizes emergency management as its own standalone function with its 2 FTEs and $977,870. Next slide. Thank you. Package 5 is the Comprehensive Community Response Program, a collaboration among fire, police, planning. For fire, the administrative assistant position is filled and fully integrated into our department, and the 4 firefighters that I just mentioned were positions at Station 17, and that is complete. The total ongoing commitment across all departments was $3.7 million, with $919,000 spent to date, as several items are still being implemented, as you can see from the matrix. For the one-time items, fire completed the training and the PPE and their fire consulting services costs, spending $190,000 of the $240,000 that we had budgeted. The fire impact fee update is still ongoing and will be completed in this year in 2026. The total one-time spending across all of the departments in this package was $344,000 of the $1.1 million budget, reflecting the timing on several of the other initiatives.
All right, and package 6 focuses on fleet and equipment. The fire mechanic position is filled and providing significant operational value. Our apparatus leases are in progress. The ladder truck deposit has been placed, and the second electric Volterra fire engine purchase is underway, consistent with the council's approval of the grant. Total spending was just over $1 million of the $5.1 million budgeted, with most capital expenditures scheduled later in the biennium. Next slide. Turning to performance measures, these are the standards by which we are evaluated. Our fire confinement rate has been 95 to 96% in recent years, and we are setting a floor target of 80% to reflect increasing incident complexity, density, and call volume. This is a realistic adjustment, not a reduction in expectations. On cardiac arrest survival for witnessed events, our actual rate was 53% in both 2023 and 2024, with a preliminary figure of 51% for 2025. Our target is 60%, and closing that gap continues to be a priority for us. Frontline apparatus availability, firefighter injury and illness, and response times are new measures this cycle, and we are committed to strengthening our data practices in these areas.
We have consistently maintained a WSRB Class 3 rating, and our goal is to sustain this. There have been 0 civilian fire fatalities in 23, 24, and preliminary in 25, which is one of our most important outcomes. Fire systems test report compliance has improved from 84% to 88%, but our target remains at 95%. These measures on the next 2 slides are primarily a part of our emergency management function, making the new emergency preparedness and recovery budget plan especially important. Next slide, please. Our 80% subscription target for the emergency alert system in 2026 is directly linked to our Alert Redmond and Everbridge programs, which you may have started seeing community outreach and public education on. Collectively, we view these as leading indicators of community resilience and very important measures, which is why they're all brand new.
I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge our team's achievements. We placed the first electric fire engine in Washington State into service in January of 2025. As you heard earlier, we were happy to secure a second $1.5 million electric fire engine grant in early 2026. We responded to more than 13,700 calls for service, including 9,500 EMS responses and 277 fires. The fire department members completed over 33,000 collective training hours. We graduated 6 paramedics, hired 2 lateral transfer firefighters into the organization, and these accomplishments demonstrate the department's ongoing agile thinking and value to the Redmond community. Next slide. And as we close, I want to be transparent about a few challenges that we do indeed face. Apparatus costs are rising more than anticipated, and deferred replacements are creating, operational constraints. Vacancies in operations remained our most urgent issue. Capital investments are a significant influence in this cycle, with Fire Station 11 as our top infrastructure priority alongside broader department needs. And given the funding uncertainty, especially at the federal level, we must plan more conservatively than our desired endeavors. We remain committed to working with the city closely to address any of these challenges systematically. And Council, I want to thank you for your attention to our budget request. And at this time, as we conclude, I open the floor for questions.
Thank you so much, Chief Shepard, Deputy Director Nara, and the rest of the team. Council will go ahead and kick off the questions. I did want to flag for our new council members, just to kind of show the full cycle of all of this, is in the baseline budget. In here, you can see the additional 4 FTEs. That was a council upgrade last year, and we deliberated and brought additional fire suppression service to Education Hill and North Redmond. So really glad to hear and to see that those positions are indeed filled and providing that service level. Okay, I'll go ahead and kick it off. I know we got a lot of information quickly. Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for your wonderful work to serve our residents. I think, especially looking at the outcomes, and as I like to point out in particular, the outcomes around 0 deaths, from fire fatalities. I think it's really incredible, and just overall, want to say thank you so much to our firefighters and our whole staff within the fire department for helping to protect the lives of our residents and the health. One question you mentioned right near the beginning, the change on those FTEs and the vision for the upcoming budget. Can you elaborate a bit more about this new emergency management change that's envisioned?
Absolutely, I can. It's not a change administratively within the fire department. What we had noticed in previous budget cycles is that it kind of just got folded in, and it didn't really have its own discrete place as we went through budget deliberations. So the big change was actually pulling it out and making it something that we can actually measure and track and demonstrate to the community. It also gives us a platform that we can do a better job of having it visible to be able to plan and associate for it. I think in the last year or two, we definitely saw that having it be a small piece of the entire fire department as opposed to that more holistic citywide expression, I don't think it robbed it of anything, but it certainly didn't give us the visibility to treat it as equitably as we'd like to in the budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so where would we expect to see it instead?
You're going to see that in the safe and resilient budget priorities, but now it's a brand new category of new budget plan offer out there. So before you had just fire medical operations and then fire support services with some of the things kind of dovetailed in there. And so we worked with finance to actually break them all out so you can really see the real divisions of work that we have within the fire department. So it shows up as new performance measures, new dashboard indicators, and a new budget plan offer.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Parsi?
This is my first budget cycle, so kind of tell me if this is not the best question right now, but I was wondering for the challenges slide, would it be possible or meaningful for us to quantify the budget impact of some of those challenges? For example, vacancies, what would it take to make sure that we can fill our positions, for the maintenance and replacement cost for apparatus and tools? What are the costs that we anticipate?
Absolutely, and I appreciate the questions. I think that's probably a couple of questions inside there, so those are well received. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, because each of my chiefs have a division in which they handle exactly those questions, if you could speak to the staffing and vacancies, Chief, and then the equipment, Chief, if you could respond to that.
So with the vacancies, this is actually a subject that we have brought forward as we've talked about during our overtime reporting. We have been able to quantify the impacts of that. It wouldn't be something I think we'd be bringing forward in the budget process, but there are numbers that we've done. We've worked really hard within the city with the different departments to come up with other strategies and plans to address it, and those are ongoing right now. So it's an appropriate question. It's a great, interesting question, and it is something that we do have a number. It's not something I can share with you tonight because I don't have it in front of me, but it has been quantified, those impacts.
And with reserve or apparatus replacement, we've been working very closely with finance to establish a replacement plan for apparatus. We've brought in some strategies to level out the expenditures over time through leases and other things that have been part of that. There's more depth in conversation to have there, but it is something we've been working on over the last 2 years in collaboration with the finance department to bring this together to a place where we can meet the needs of the organization, recognizing the rapid increases of cost associated with those apparatus. So we're in a much better place today than we were 2 years ago, I would say.
And absolutely, and hopefully that answers your question. I do want to close that out by saying that this team has been very nimble in their thinking, very agile, whether it's introducing the leasing. Thank you, Finance, for working with us on that. That's a little bit more innovative thinking as far as how do we get new equipment into the city for our aging and equipment that's losing or at the end of its service life. Additionally, with chasing our vacancies, that's really where we have been very creative and coming up with programs. The city is evaluating the Flex PCM program, which I think that you've probably pre-received. Those are the things that we're working on to make sure that we can work very closely with the city and really close those gaps and make sure that we realize some savings.
Thank you so much. Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you, Chair. I thank you for presenting this evening. I appreciate it. I was chatting with a peer of mine in the Metro Detroit area, and they were singing praises about how they had heard, of course, through industry that Redmond, and him knowing that I'm from Redmond, that we've ordered our second EV. And he was kind of razzing me a little bit and saying, you know, you're trying to be nationally famous. And I reassured him, no, we're trying to be trusted locally. So there's folks that are definitely paying attention to what we're doing here in Redmond. So commend you, Chief, and to the staff to, one, the vision, and two, carrying it out. On the carrying it out, Deputy Chief Whitney, I had a question on Package 6. I saw that, of course, we haven't yet gone through even half of what the allocation is. Once we start spending into the second half of the biennium, are we on track as far as what had already been forecasted?
We are, some of this is delivery of apparatus. So in some cases, we have leased apparatus, and began paying for those upon order. There's others that had been previously ordered. The timeline for purchase, from time of purchase to time of receipt of apparatus, depending on the type, can be up to 5 years. So some of these were purchased early, the budgeted to arrive in 2026, but have not yet arrived, so those will be paid for at the end of the year.
Right, so we might see a budget adjustment later on.
The vast majority of that budget will be used for those apparatus when they arrive on scene for us here.
Thank you.
Councilmember Forsyth?
Thank you. Great presentation. You guys sounded like you rehearsed it, so good job. It was very well handed off. Looking at slide 4 and the baseline budget and the MIH roles that are moving into the community health and well-being, just want to get a general sense of, since our subcommittee on alternative crisis response is meeting soon, of what the implications are for our subcommittee of this budget element.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank the council for our current biennium in the positions that we have available to us. Those are positions that we're just preparing to fill now, which will build out the community health team to 9 individuals, which will be great for continuing to deliver care across the continuum for residents of Redmond and beyond. I think one of the biggest things that we're going to talk about within that committee is really looking at it holistically, not looking just at crisis response, but really looking at aging disabilities associated with people within our community as well. It's the fastest growing population within our community, and not just here, but nationally. And at 65, when those individuals started turning 65, baby boomers, 10 years ago, there wasn't much impact, but at 75 now, there's starting to be more and more impact associated with chronic illness. And how do we take care of those individuals so they can be remain in their homes long term is absolutely the most important piece. But the other aspects of this is if we can take care of them preventatively upstream in managing their care in a preventive manner, similar to how fire prevention has worked in the past, but on an EMS side, the hope is we can reduce the volume of impact to us as response units and also the clinical environment at the hospitals. So that's going to be a large part of the conversation is looking at everything holistically and creating a team that's not specific just in one capacity, but a team that has the ability to answer all the different needs of the community.
Absolutely love that. Thank you so much and look forward to that conversation. I've referred some folks to you guys, so I really appreciate having that team in place. And when I was reviewing this packet and saw the EMS calls versus the fire calls, the first thing that came to mind is you guys should be called lifesavers and not firefighters.
I agree.
Thank you. I'll go to this side of the table. Councilmember Soni?
Okay. We were just in a meeting, committee of whole for the parks, and we were talking about the digital upgrades. And I do see even on that there is we are even talking about for fires, like, in terms of the modernizing data management systems. Are there any legacy systems that you are planning to retire in the upcoming budget cycle? And, or otherwise, is there a budget that has been kept aside for the digital maintenance or upgrades apart from, we have been talking about a lot of our physical equipment upgrades, but for your digital transformation, is there any budget that has been specifically kept aside for this?
So I'm not aware of any systems that we're looking to retire right now. I think that when we look at new technologies, we want to be very intentional, and we want to work across the city. I would say, like, something that the city's been working on, and fire is certainly involved in it, is the InterGov system. We just want to consistently work with all the other city teams to make more than certain that we optimize that system. Systems that we have in place, we are looking to expand what we have. We know that the value of data, value of information, and so if it can improve our efficiencies, we want it. If it can improve our safety, we want it. You know, if it can improve our customer service, we want it. And so that's how we look at new technologies and onboarding that. Chief Whitney, and I don't want to call you out, but I know that you're working on a new platform to bring into the fire service, one that will significantly improve some of our data-informed decision-making. So we're looking at that, but I think the costs have already been covered on that. So nothing that we're looking at currently that I can think of.
I would say everything will be in BTIP.
Yes, and thank you, Chief. And yeah, and it would be in the BTIP if we were looking for that.
The Business Technology Improvement Program that we'll see a little bit later. Councilmember Procria, do you have a question for this round?
No question for this round. I think my questions were right.
Great. Okay, just want to make sure everyone had a chance. I'll hop in, and then I do see we've got questions at the other side of the table again. I really appreciate the questions from my colleagues, especially on the mental health professionals. If we could go to the enhancement package number 5, Comprehensive Community Response Program. And before I ask my detailed question, I'll just say very specifically, hearing you all discuss this program again tonight, I was reminded that leading up to the deliberations to create this program, there was a lot of good conversation around this very table about how to better organize and collaborate to deliver better service and better outcomes for our residents. We don't hear from the program as a united program very frequently, and so I will just put in a plug that it would be great to actually have that come back, particularly before we get too far into deliberations later this year. It is actually about more than just the money. We would like to hear how it's going and what we expected that to be able to achieve, what was it able to, what ended up being the limits. Does that seem fair? I'm seeing lots of head nods, so.
I'm totally fair, and I can just say that that presentation is being produced right now across all teams.
Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so my more detailed question that popped up just in and amongst the other conversation that was happening. I do see reflected here, not part of your department, but another department for this offer, the mental health professional, that is listed as on hold, and we will hear from the planning department, it looks like, about that. That I have in my hand, and what I was rooting around for is my paper copy of the executive summary of the current budget. There are 2 additional social workers for the alternative response program that the council funded, and I don't see them reflected on this slide. And I'm wondering if we have a gap here. Oh, my apologies. Staff are saying that they're in the next slide. Oh, because these are continuing on. Okay, wonderful. So these are also listed as planning, so we will hear from the planning department about why these are on hold. Is there anything that, as a representative of the program, that could be shared?
Absolutely, I'll share briefly. This is coming forward to the committee that's going to be talking about alternative response. The team has gone through and we've outlined a structure that includes 9 individuals, which is inclusive of those 3 positions. Again, we really addressed it from a holistic thought process of how do we best care for the entire community and not isolate individuals within the team to certain groups. So that will come forward to the committee when they meet. I don't want to get ahead of it, but it is something that's been thought out and is a plan. It's inclusive of social workers. It's inclusive of coordinators to support the work that's happening. It's also inclusive of licensed nurse practitioners to support some of that healthcare needs as well. So we're bringing the entire thing together with mental health professionals, multiples, as well as social workers, and restructuring of the team that currently exists, if that makes sense. So it's something we're excited about, and I don't want to get ahead of it. It'll be presented at the meeting, but it is rounding out the entirety of what we have now with the budgets that we have now, and not including what could come in 27 and 28, a team of 9 that more robust to provide multiple services to the community.
Okay, so a couple questions then that are percolating and just gaps that I think the council should discuss. Those positions that have been on hold thus far, my understanding is those are the ones that had been on hold while we were evaluating the services that Sound was delivering as a result of the new King County levy. And so maybe these positions wouldn't be needed, and therefore council could have the flexibility to reauthorize or not these positions. And it sounds like there is a proposal on the table. I would just encourage the subcommittee members, as you're digging in, if this is a whole new proposal and outside the original bounds of the alternative crisis response that you're evaluating, feel free to come back and tell us to start the conversation from scratch, because that's different than how the table was originally set. Councilmember Forsyth.
Just for context, we are meeting on Monday.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you, Chief Whitney, for hanging in with my questions as I kind of figured it out on the fly. Okay, other questions? Council Vice President.
Thank you. So follow up on Councilmember Forsyth's question about when we started talking about aging in place, 65. My question is a bit in the weeds, and it's knowing that when you're over 65, there's a 70% chance that you're going to be disabled at some point. The average is 34 months that you're on disability. I just know this from my day work. So with that, and we've got a larger population that is going to hopefully be able to stay in Redmond because of affordability and whatnot. Are these numbers being considered when we're thinking about the next few years? Because we're going to start feeling this and being the responders that's going to fall onto fire.
Yeah, and I know Chief Whitney is going to be excited to answer that question, but I can tell you that that is at the forefront of a lot of our decision-making. We think about this an awful lot. We know our demographic. We know what those issues are currently. We know what the emergent issues are. And we build programs to address not only today, but tomorrow. And Chief, I know you've done an awful lot of work on this, so I'll probably let you close that out.
Well, I think, like the electric fire engine, this is an area for us to lead in the nation, in that this is new to a lot of the clinical environment as well as emergency response environment. It's impacting public health as a whole significantly. I would suggest that COVID exposed it much earlier than anticipated, but it's here, and it's having significant impact on all aspects of public health. So we are being very aggressive about how we look at it and and that's why you hear me come up here time and time again and say, look, we need to look at things from a holistic approach about public health and not just one aspect of it. And that's why I would say I'm excited about Monday's meeting. Unfortunately, I won't be in that meeting, but I'm excited about what's coming forward because it is holistic. It is looking at mental health for sure. It's looking at crisis response from all aspects. And it is really leaning into the fact that we need a team that can address those things. A multidimensional team of people that have the capabilities to provide for all aspects, and that's what I think we're starting to build out. We have a structure now to move that forward, and I think that'll come forward during the committee meeting with the group that's there.
Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you. I'll second several of the things that the council president raised in terms of this discussion going forward, and look forward to discussing this with the council and following up on the subcommittee's work on this. Just one small question. Are we still calling it the Thrive program, or are we now calling it Comprehensive Community Response Program?
It's a great question. What we're calling it Community Health Thrive is the terminology that we're using as a team, overhead team.
Great, thank you. And I guess I'll second I really enjoyed, I think for several years we did have joint updates at Public Safety Human Services Committee from the Thrive program on kind of a regular cadence, or now we have the updated name, but I really enjoyed hearing from all of it together. So definitely would love to see that come back.
Thank you. Any further questions before we hear from Public Works? All right, thank you so much. We really appreciate you, team, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
We'll give the team just a second to transition. Joining Deputy Director Nara here at the table, we have Public Works Director Aaron Burt. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. Do you need me to say anything? You're going to say anything? All right. Good evening, Council. Aaron Burt, Public Works Director. Next slide. So the mission statement of the Redmond Public Works is we build, operate, protect, and maintain the city's essential infrastructure. We provide the foundation for all the great things that happen here in Redmond day in and day out. Next slide. We're broken up into three main areas. One, the director's office, where I have the city engineer, policy and planning programs within that. And then we have two areas overseen by deputies, which we call our portfolio management, one being utilities, environmental programs, anything dealing with water quality, distribution, environmental programs, stormwater and wastewater, and then the other component being our mobility and infrastructure. That's capital delivery, street fleets, concrete signals, and traffic safety. Next slide. For the budget next year, a department of 143.6 employees, that includes supplemental staff that we bring on during the summertime to assist in all components of our maintenance and operations crew. Bring your attention to two key areas under the healthy and sustainable, safe and reliable drinking water. That is showing an increase of about 12% over this year's baseline budget. We're anticipating additional costs relating to PFAS monitoring and additional staff that we're looking to bring on board in order to bring us up to a standard under the American Water Works Association maintenance standards to respond to issues out in the field. Additionally, there is an increase under wastewater management, seeing that as about a 16% increase. We're beginning to forecast additional costs that will potentially be pass-through costs from the county, and then also some additional costs relating to our lift stations. Next slide. And everything within streets and fleets, fleet management and capital investment. That capital investment delivery is the cost of the staffing that is provided. That is not the CIP project budget as a whole. Next slide. So under the Healthy and Sustainable Enhancement Package number 1, we are still in the process. We had 4 modeling efforts dealing with water, stormwater, and wastewater modeling. When we adopted Redmond 2050, we knew we needed to get into our assumption models, especially in the downtown, Overlake, and Marymore Village area. Some of that modeling for capacity in those areas had not been updated in some time. So we're in the process of doing that right now, and we hope to have those results by the end of the year. Additionally, at the bottom, I do want to draw your attention to the wastewater septic to sewer conversion plan. Spoken about this in previous council meetings, but we are finalizing a series of policy proposals to bring back to council here within the next couple months to gain your guidance on that very important program. Next slide. Package 3. Yeah, so during this year's budget, council funded a new construction inspector, essentially to restart up our private drainage and our FOG. That's fat, oils, and grease program. We have been starting the private drainage inspection, and we're just now finalizing the new components of the FOG outreach that I hope to bring to council here sometime over the summer to introduce you to that program, the goals and objectives of it, and how we're going to be implementing that out in the community. Package 3 is what we should be on. Yep, great. One of our biggest concerns here with the FOG program is to ensure that obviously local businesses are in compliance with that program, but then also not to add a major cost burden, because you can get somewhat complicated in terms of grease interceptors and other means that might need to be installed in order to manage that. Next slide should be enhancement package 4. Great. On this, I'd like to call your attention to 3 different components. One is the Transportation ADA Transition Plan. So what this is, it's setting us up for future ADA projects. We're going back out and reevaluating all of our curb cuts and areas that prevent transportation, ADA mobility within the sidewalks and in the transportation realm. Should be done with that here at the end of the year. The other big win for us that we were able to purchase are mobile security barriers. So those are those L-shaped metal barriers with wheels. They were so popular after we bought the initial run of 26. We bought another 26 more. We tested those out at some events last year, starting with Derby Days, and found that they were extremely effective, meaning we could take large vehicles, public works dump trucks, or even police vehicles out of the public sphere, reduce the security presence, but increase the security support, meaning kind of reduce that visual clutter out there with police vehicles and dump trucks, but still providing safety for the public there. And then the final component is the curbside management plan. This is our effort to go out and catalog and understand how we're currently using the curbside in the downtown, Overlake, and Marymore area. And that's going to drive some further decisions in terms of how we implement that down the road as it relates to allocation of curb space to meet all the competing demands out there. Package 7. So I want to highlight the one thing that we have on here is the language access support. And what this was dollars provided to Public Works to support our inspectors that go out into the field, work with local businesses. Previously, we had been using one of our employees who's a native Spanish speaker to support for some businesses that needed that additional language support. To date, actually, we have not tapped into these dollars. We haven't had the need for it, but it is still available for us if need be as we go forward. Package 16. One thing that I guess you could say is not sexy, but extremely important that we're implementing. I want to call your attention to the monument system assessment and reestablishment. I don't know if you've ever been out and about, seen small little discs buried into the ground in and around the city. That gives us our vertical and horizontal controls. So when people come in to build something, they survey off of those, and so that we can ensure that we got the right easements and property lines. Over the years, because pavement shifts, the ground moves, those discs pop and go missing, our system has been degraded. So we went out this past summer and used some interns and also some surveyor support, and we're only able to find half of those within the city. So it really shows how degraded that is. So what we're going to be doing here this summer is reestablishing new monument controls. So that will be very beneficial to the city and the developers as a whole. The other thing that we're finding as we went out and did this is that we've identified a lot of right-of-way encroachments and also some aspects where we don't even know where our easements are. Sounds a little onerous. It's not, but it is a process that tells you just about how dynamic and the exponential growth in Redmond that has happened. Oftentimes, you have a right-of-way, it's 10 feet. People don't realize that it's on their property. They'll build a fence, they'll build a garage, they'll put a hedge in there. And we're beginning to identify a lot of those encroachments, and we'll be dealing with those as well. Moving on to performance measures, it seems like we have like 90 of these for whatever reason, but we are going through a process where we're trying to neck these down. So on the first page, I do want to bring your attention to the percentage of groundwater monitoring wells that meet quality standards. In 2025, this number was listed at 37%, and we're shooting for 57%. That is dealing with the change in PFAS testing standards that have come down from the federal and state level that has dropped that number down. We're giving it this year to make the determination on those results, and I expect those target numbers to change as we move forward. The other thing that you'll see in here, and on the bottom one, says State of the Asset Report. So the city adopted our comprehensive asset management or municipal asset management policy. And right now, what we're doing in Public Works, working with our partners in other city departments, is developing our first ever State of the Asset Report that we'll present to council. This first iteration of the State of the Asset Report is going to focus mostly on data quality, understanding what kind of data we can collect and begin to build that assessment of the standards and the current conditions of our assets. Once we're able to get a better baseline understanding of the state of our assets, we're going to begin to roll that into more and more of our performance metrics, using asset management as the foundation to present options to council for strategic investments for asset maintenance and asset replacement. So I just wanted to call your attention to that you'll see that referenced from page to page. Moving on to the next page. Percentage of community-wide solid waste diverted from the landfill, currently at 47%. We're targeting 50%. Two things at play here. One, it's the construction demolition diversion program that is really beginning to get its legs, and we'll see more of that, that increase, that percentage increase of the diversion from the landfill. Also, to date, since we transitioned to Recology, it's only been 3 months, but they have been absolutely phenomenal as it comes to their engagement with the community, the connection with multifamily housing, and getting more units signed up for example, composting, and focusing really on their recycling program. So we're already beginning to see benefits off of that, and that's reflected in our numbers there for business and multifamily complexes participating in organics recycling. Next slide. The dashboard indicator, freshwater quality index. So this number, I just want to bring your attention to it. 75 is a good number. And so what that is that Ecology has, excuse me, Ecology has a methodology that basically takes many different components of water quality and consolidates it into one easily to digest number. So for example, that number of 75 deals with pH balance, bacteria levels, oxygen dissolution in the water. And then what it does is it compares that to overall or comparative health in other water bodies. So a 75 may seem like a C, but actually getting water quality index up into an 80 or 85 level is actually pretty difficult. 75 tells us that our water quality as a whole within the city is pretty good, but occasionally we have issues that spike up that are kind of keeping us in that 75 range. So it's not as bad as it might look. And then the final one on this page, number of parcels in the city served by septic systems. Talking previously about our septic to sewer program, we are beginning to use this as an indicator just because of how important it is for us to move homeowners off of septic into our sewer system and the investment that that's going to take. For example, up there in the Hollywood Creek area, we've begun to see some higher levels of contamination within the water. When we overlaid the parcels that are still on septic system, we're seeing a direct correlation into that watershed. So this is an important number for us to track and something that's going to be a priority for the department moving forward. Next slide. Under the safe and resilient, every council member's favorite topic is bike lanes and priority routes swept. I know you love this. We have our mini sweeper. We're going to be reaching out to get you guys out there for a ride-along. But with this mini sweeper, we're going to be able to do some focused sweeping on those bike routes and also on the priority areas. That isn't the other component on our sweeping program I want to point out is we do have a new electric sweeper that we ran into a couple issues to get that deployed, but you should see that out on the streets here this summer, which is going to be great. The other thing I do want to talk about, because the council was very supportive behind this, is the active traffic control devices. So we put in adaptive controls in downtown on Redmond Way, and unfortunately, right now, they are not working as spec. So I had promised you, I think last year, when we began this program, that I'd be coming back to talk to you about the benefits of this adaptive signaling program. We are not finding that we're getting the payoff of the system that we had originally hoped. One of the things that we are dealing with is that the system is malfunctioning. And so during random times of the day, it was putting lights into flash. It wasn't moving traffic through the downtown core like we had expected. So we've turned off the equipment at this time, and we're working with the contractor and the software company to work through those issues. We had proposed to bring a furtherance of that program up into the Overlake area to expand it further. That's on hold right now until we can get these issues in play. I know it's been an area of concern and excitement from council, but I just wanted to let you know that's where we're at with that program right now. Next slide. Geez, they just keep going, don't they? So on this one, I do want to call out our transition to alternative fuel vehicles, hybrid plug-in or fuel and electric. Right now, our fleet is set at 28%. The mayor put out the ambitious challenge of a 50% hybrid fleet by, I think, 2030. With the purchases that we're looking to make here in 2026 and into the next biennial budget cycle, we are looking to increase that by another 10 or 15%. So more to follow, and we'll keep you posted on the updates on that. And the next slide, pavement condition index. Right now, aggregate, whole, arterials, feeders, and local streets, we're sitting at a 68. With the investments that we're making and we are looking to make in the next biennium, we expect to keep that as an aggregate number above 70. I will be coming back here in the next month or two with an update on our pavement strategic plan for us to go a little bit more in depth on that topic. Moving on to department highlights for 25-26. Got to call it out once again. We were able to get our department-wide accreditation, and it looks like we are slated for, I think, June 16th to come and get a plaque presentation from the regional director, and then we'll be doing a bit of an internal celebration there in Public Works. Everybody, my staff are asking me what kind of swag are they going to get, and I maybe a clap and a thank you, a handshake, T-shirt. I don't know yet. We'll get something figured out. We are working, as mentioned, on the state of the asset report that's coming. Super excited about this. Our asset management program continues to mature and evolve and is really going to have high payoff for the city down the road. Deputy Director Bueller and I were able to present at the APWA Washington Conference the other week on this, talking about that asset management is just not a software solution. And I'd like 5 different cities come up and ask us, what are you guys doing? How are you doing it? Can we have your stuff? And we said, absolutely. Let's get that engagement going. So we're making progress on that. Municipal code rewrite that council's been instrumental in helping us with. The big capital win for us was that Redmond Central Connector, getting that Phase 3 across the line. It was a big lift, and we're super happy to be there. 10-year solid waste contract with Recology continues to pay off for us. We'll do so in years to come. Got the concrete crew up and running in 2025. You've seen their output. They're actually redoing the stairs over here at the Public Safety Building. That's how adept and kind of skilled artisans these guys are on the concrete crew. They're great. The construction, temporary construction dewatering limitations in the downtown core, getting that adopted was a huge win for our environmental program. And then the pedestrian scrambles all up and down Cleveland Avenue. And we're also going to be looking at, where else in the city would it make sense to implement the pedestrian scrambles. And then the final one I do want to call out, once again, non-sexy, but really showed the ability and the skill set of the crews within the Public Works Department. Our wells were not producing at standard in wells 1 and 2 there in Anderson Park. They had not been rebuilt or maintained in a number of years. What we were able to do, we brought each of those wells offline, we rebuilt the systems, and now we're up back to optimal efficiency and production in those wells. And what was great is we did that all in-house with our own in-house knowledge. So it was a big win for us. Moving on to the budget challenges, obviously, I'm a broken record on this. We have aging infrastructure. There's a cost involved in that. We're working on that using the principles of asset management and then also kind of some sub-programs through our general water plan, our upcoming stormwater and surface water management plan, being able to really identify what those long-term costs are going to be to the city and making those determinations in terms of at what level do we want to maintain our assets and when is the best time to replace them. Capital delivery, although we've been making a lot of progress, and I'm very pleased with how the the division is tackling our challenges within capital delivery. Once again, costs continue to increase. Some of our initial assumptions that we made for scope of work, cost estimations, we're finding that in the past, you could do a cost estimation 5 years ago. When it was time to do the project, you could dust it off and maybe you'd see a cost increase or a variance of 10, 15%. What we're finding is that in some of those older cost estimations, it's now an increase of 40 to 60% on costs. It's the nature of the beast right now when it comes to inflation and infrastructure delivery. But on the positive side, we are finding that when we go out to bid, the number of bidders bidding on the projects has increased exponentially. That's the construction industry right now, but previously where we might have gotten 1 or 2 bidders, we're now getting 7, 8, or 9 bidders. Now that is making it a bit more competitive, but it is also a challenge for us because many of those bidders have never bid or are not versed in how to bid on public sector projects. So bids are coming in actually incomplete, missing critical information. So we are taking a look at how can we go out, educate the contracting community so that the bids we get are quality coming in. And then the final component that we're facing across the city as a whole is the changing federal and state regulation compliance environment. And what we're seeing, the big thing off the top of my head is with the changing nature of the PFAS compliant as a great example of that. But then also there are components that have been coming down from the state, even dealing with the advent of middle housing, that there's costs involved that are being put on us that we're not accounting for. So with that, thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Burt. Really appreciate that overview. Are there, who would like to kick us off? Councilmember Prakria.
Thank you for the presentation. I know we've had discussions about standing up a dedicated pavement conditioning crew. I saw the markers on our pavement conditioning index in the presentation. I was just wondering, from a budgetary standpoint, where is this money coming from, or where would this money come from? Where does it fit into all the numbers we just saw?
Sure. What we're looking at is to fund this through the Transportation Benefit District. So that's a 0.1% sales tax increase that the council added 2023, I want to say 24, was it? Right now, that budget supports the concrete crew. It is providing additional dollars for paving activities, and we're adding those dollars to kind of large-scale paving projects that we already had in the queue. And then we would look to fund the potential paving crew out of those funds as well. The dollars that are being collected through that fund is trending high, and so we feel that we have enough money in there to create a paving crew and additional paving projects.
Thank you, Director Burt, and I do appreciate the enthusiasm and the question. I think for the sake of keeping the conversation contained and just like easy for everyone to follow, this is a conversation on the baseline budget that we've just been presented. It's nice to hear that there is a preview and a lot of enthusiasm for
That would be an
a
enhancement.
potential enhancement, but none of that can be promised at this time just because those negotiations have yet to occur. Are there any questions on the baseline? Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you for the update on the Adaptive Signals project. I'm curious to hear a little more about whether we got any assurances from the vendor to make sure the technology works. If it's not working, it does seem like they should either reimburse us and we should work with another vendor, or and just come on to hear a little bit more about what the plan is going forward on that, since that has been a priority for a while.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great question. So within our contracting provisions, there are certain parameters that they must meet. We are going through that process right now, and it starts with us identifying what the failures were between the implementation in the field and what was promised through the contract. And that started with me sending them a nastygram letter about 2 weeks ago, putting them on notice. So we're still working through that, but we're definitely working towards the solution.
Great. And for the Overlake project, are we, you mentioned that that's on hold. Are we assessing potentially working with a different vendor, or does it make more sense to just try to find one vendor that could serve the whole city?
Yeah, ideally in these situations, I don't want to bring in two different contractors to work on the same type of technology. So we put that on hold right now to assess whether or not we can get across the finish line with the contractor we have in place right now with that technology. If it's not there, because we do believe that this is the way we need to go for traffic management, we would probably look at a different vendor.
Okay, great. Well, I hope we'll be able to figure out the technology.
Yes.
Because it is something that I've been very excited about in our past budgets.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Before we leave this topic, one more question. The Overlake piece of the project, is that the project that is funded by the Community Facilities District?
I'll have to double check on that one, on the funding source. Yeah.
Thank you. Seeing some nods that it might be that one, but that would be good to clarify. Councilmember Parsi, thank you for your patience.
I just wanted to make sure that Public Works also gets some love because you guys also save lives, water quality, and making sure there's no deaths on roads, and roads are safe and our infrastructure is safe. So I just wanted to make sure that
Thank you.
following fire, you would also
I appreciate
get
that.
that recognition
Thank
of
you.
saving lives in different ways. I wanted to ask you a question about the cleanliness of our streets with the growing population. I see one item about staffing for collecting street garbage cans. I am seeing at my bus stop more garbage on the grounds. So I didn't know if there is kind of the same process for collecting garbage from cans versus the street, and how do we ensure general cleanliness of our streets?
Sure, let me address that. So we have, within our contract with Recology, they are required to service our street cans that you see downtown or in other areas. So Recology has that on the route. They come and they pick that up 2 to 3 times a week. We are in the process of doubling the number of street cans that we have in our system. I want to say, I won't throw a number out there because it's going to be wrong. I can't be expected to remember everything, but we're doubling the numbers, which will be good. And we've already identified strategic locations to put those cans. The other thing that we're doing is installing sensors within those cans to determine the fill level. Now, you may have seen those big belly trash cans in other locations. It's kind of the same kind of concept, but it's not a big belly can. It's a normal street can, has a sensor on the lid. Once it gets to 80% full, it will notify us, and then Recology will be able to go and service the can. So during events like over a weekend event or some other situation, when there might have been a lot of trash activity, we can get out there rather than having to sit for a couple days. Additionally, we have one individual within our streets team who is focused on litter pickup throughout the whole community. So they have a route that they drive, they respond to queue alerts, picking up trash in the right-of-way, but then also have a normal route that they work. Trash in and around bus stops is the responsibility of Metro. So if you see at a Metro bus stop, they sometimes have those green baskets attached to a sign. That's Metro's responsibility. If, in fact, you're finding trash in those areas, let us know. We'll reach out to Metro, but they're supposed to serve those cans. So overlapping responsibilities there.
Thank you. Council Vice President?
Thank you. Director Burt, on page 5, bringing it back to baseline conversation, on page 5, we see a 7% increase in fleet management due to increased fuel costs. While, yes, each year we also have some extraordinary global events happening. Is the 7% just withstanding the recent global events, or is that inclusive of?
It says forecasting into the next biennium, continual increase in fuel costs, especially diesel costs. Additionally, in that $900,000 increase, we're also anticipating increase in vehicle costs for purchase. So it's not, we put increased fuel costs kind of as a catch-all, but it's also, we're finding that just standard vehicle costs are increasing, right, and have been increasing, so it's capturing that cost as well.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Forsyth?
Love that we're just going down the line here. So a couple of questions. When we were talking about the septic conversion, which I'm really excited for that program, that's probably one of the first conversations you and I had
Yep.
started at the city, and my excitement for converting folks. So very excited about that. Thank you. You mentioned, maybe I misheard you. You said Hollywood Creek we were seeing, and I don't know where that is, and I tried to Google it and I couldn't find it. So I don't know if I'm missing it.
It's north. It's like
Rose Hill area?
Ed Hill
Ed
side.
Hill.
Yeah, on northeast 124th,
Okay.
up northern part of the city.
Got it.
In that watershed.
I will look at that area.
Yep.
Thank you. And then going to the slide where we talk about the 520 bridge FTE, is that a new FTE or is that?
Yes, so part of that with this, when we built the 2 pedestrian bridges, when Microsoft built the pedestrian bridge there at the Microsoft Technology Station and then the Overlake Station, we have a operating agreement with Microsoft to fund, we handle all the litter and maintenance activities on the bridge. So we added a position, that individual hits those bridges 3 to 4 times a day, picking up trash, reporting any issues of vandalism, handling some of the minor maintenance tasks. Now, that doesn't take up their full workload.
That was my question.
Yes, they provide support, other support to the streets team,
Okay.
but that's their primary focus.
Great. Thank you for that additional information. And then you had mentioned the middle housing costs and all that's involved. Can you elaborate on that topic?
Yeah, so as part of the update to Redmond 2050, we're bringing in middle housing. So the changes on middle housing means we have to update all of our engineering design standards and make that determination really, like something as simple. You have a side sewer, right? Right now in the Redmond Code, it says only one home can be connected to a side sewer. You can get a variance and maybe put 2. If you put a 4-pack on a 4-plex, right, or 4 homes onto one parcel, you don't want 4 different side sewers running on that. So what we're doing, for example, is I just signed today a code variance basically saying that you can put up to 4 homes on one side sewer while we address these updated design standards in our wastewater and water manuals and so forth. So it's, the middle housing costs and the additional burden on us is understanding how we can fit and adapt our infrastructure that was built for suburbs and begin to change that into a denser city infrastructure construct. So it's going to take engineering time, analysis, and then also probably a lot of not play as you go, adapt as you go as the different types of development come into place. So, that's a state change. It's something that the city has supported, but now we need to catch up on the engineering infrastructure side of the house.
Got it. Thank you for that additional context. That makes perfect sense, and appreciate the future thinking and the future proofing on that for sure. And then, yes, on bike sweepers, I definitely want to go on a ride along.
Great. We'll get you out there.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni, did you have a question for this round?
Is it on? Okay. I have a question, but I'm not sure, if it is associated with the baseline, but I still want to ask because it's in my mind. How does this baseline will be impacted? Because we have been talking about our maintenance and operations building, and I know these are still under the discussions, nothing has been formalized. But will there be any impact as we proceed with the maintenance and operations construction work? Do you think there will be any impact on the baseline here, the one that you are proposing?
No, not right now. What we're doing is, obviously the Maintenance and Operations Center is being funded out of the capital budget. Right now, with the budget that we're proposing for 27-28, because with the design process and implementation, any impacts for a change to the Maintenance Operations Center would not be felt until probably late 28. So any changes or potential impacts for whatever direction we go for the new Maintenance and Operations Center will be reflected in the 29-30 baseline budget.
Thank you so much. And we will have a briefing just like this related to the capital investment program again in September. But we'll be making our way toward that, absolutely. Councilmember Pakria, did you have another question? Go ahead.
I did have another question, which is, Director Britt, you had mentioned asset management, and asset management is also listed under the 25-26 slide at the end. I'm just wondering how, you had also mentioned that asset management is more than a software problem. How is that reflected in the baseline budget plans? And where is that reflected, rather, is my question. I'm just trying to learn more about the work you do for asset management.
Sure, great question. So I have an asset management team that is comprised of 5 individuals. And actually, last year, the council funded let me find it. Council funded a senior planner in utilities. I'm sorry, that's on page 6. That position works under our asset performance manager, and her name's Megan. We stole her from Bothell. She's awesome. She is in the process right now of writing the State of the Asset Management Report and also working on the development of the asset management plans for some major subcategories. So the costs for the asset management team, which is a manager, a utility planner, a senior planner, a business analyst, and 2 GIS analysts, are spread across the budget and our overhead rate. But they work, especially our GIS planners, are working day in and day out to validate asset management conditions, working with our TIS department through Esri and our GIS layer. Our business analyst is driving the development of asset management dashboards and reporting functions, and also acts as our liaison, because so much of our technical support when it comes to asset management, which is our work order management system, which is called Lucity, and then also with the ESRI or the GIS program, we have somebody who kind of works with GIS as a liaison in those components. So the costs are spread throughout the budget as a whole through the overhead rate, but it is also a partnership, because what we're working to do is act as the facilitator. We own a large component of the assets here in the city that are the major cost drivers, but so does Parks, and so does general government as a whole. So we work in conjunction with them to help them understand. I'll even include fire on that, and fire facilities and their vehicles, police vehicles, everything across the board. So we work in conjunction with the other departments to begin to capture, normalize, and then present this information, and with the intent of presenting it in a clear and comprehensive manner that you understand the state of the assets and the decisions that need to be made to maintain or to replace them moving forward.
Thank you.
Then just a quick follow-up, with regards to the forecasted 27-28 proposed budget and the asset management team that you just talked about, what changes to the team are being proposed in this 9% budget?
Right now, with the composition of the team, we're not proposing any changes in this next biennial budget. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Any additional questions for the director? Okay, well, that concludes our discussion on the baseline budget for Public Works. Thank you so much, Director, for being here. Deputy Director Nara, any additional comments or questions?
No, thank you. Thank you so much for listening and all the great questions. We'll bring back our final set of departments on May 12th study session, which will include planning and police departments.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
There has been a request before we move to our planning items, to have a very brief recess. So we will be in recess until 8:18. Okay, 8:20. We'll go 8:20. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. The second item on tonight's agenda is the land use map and zoning map amendments at 6900 188th Avenue Northeast. Introducing this item will be Sarah Fee Allen, Deputy Director of Planning and Community Development. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Council. I'm joined by Director Carol Helland, who's online, Jeff Churchill, our Long-Range Planning Manager, and Glenn Coyle, our Senior Planner. We also have the pleasure of being joined by our Planning Commission Chairperson, Susan Weston, to answer questions from the Council about the Commission's review of this item, as you all requested. Tonight, staff is seeking Council's direction and aiming for a final action on June 2nd. I will now turn it over to Glenn to recap this amendment and support your review of the Planning Commission's recommendation. Glenn?
Hiya, council members. My name is Glenn Coyle, Senior Planner in the Long Range Planning Team. Topic of this study session tonight is a land use and zoning map amendment that is part of the annual comprehensive amendment docket. I also put up a visual of where this is, just so folks know where that is. I also have a couple of maps of where the zoning is. This proposal pertains to a 5.82 acre undeveloped parcel located at 6900 188th Ave Northeast in the Southeast Redmond neighborhood that currently has split land use and zoning designations. 1 acre is mixed use and the remainder 4.82 acres is business park. The applicant is requesting that council approve the redesignation of business park to citywide mixed use so that the whole parcel has consistent land use designation in the comprehensive plan, and concurrently rezone the business park area of the parcel to corridor mixed use, ensuring that the entire parcel has consistent zoning. At the March 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting, we provided the technical committee and planning commission analysis and recommendations for this proposal. Council requested a study session and requested some additional information, which is included in the issues matrix in your packet. Staff is requesting that council provide direction on this proposal so that we can prepare for final action at a later meeting, most likely June 2nd. And I will turn it back to Council President Stewart for discussion.
Thank you, team. Really appreciate you being here. If it's all right with the council, I will, what's been transmitted to us is a recommendation to deny this action via the Planning Commission. So since we have our chair here, Chair Weston, would you like to share a few words about the commission's deliberations, things that were taken into consideration, and where you all landed with your recommendation?
All right. So first of all, thanks to staff for putting together the packet, because this is one of the first opportunities we've had as a group to do the docket process. So we were new to it. As you might be able to tell from the docket, we went a lot of different directions before coming together really nicely, I think, with general agreement. You'll notice that it was a 5-2 decision. As usual, the Planning Commission, we welcome just different opinions. I think it's democratic. We have really smart people who think different ways. So if you want me to go more into the reason that that was a split decision, I'm happy to. Our overall goals while we were doing it, first of all, was just to be mindful of the goals that we all enacted together for Redmond 2050, managing growth responsibly and in a way that reflects the values of the community. I loved being part of the tail end of that process, especially the community feedback, and we really felt that we wanted to make sure that any changes that we make at this point would reflect all of the work that went into 2050 and be an extension of it, not clawing it back before we had a chance for the new plan to be successful. Our second issue with this was really thinking from a slightly different perspective and untangling land use from projects. So we had over a year plus as this proposal took different forms and came before us and then came before you and then came back to us. There were different proposals there for what sort of project might result at the end. And people got very attached to some portions of those, especially the housing and the prospect of affordable housing and housing soon. And what we very quickly decided is we actually had to take a step back. Remember, this is about land use and zoning and making sure that when we're dividing up the pie of land across the city, that we have the right percentages in the right places, and that it reflects the values of the community. And so once we got a full understanding of what we were working on and then pulled back to land use, that made the decision a lot easier. And I think the conversations about that were very productive. And then the final thing that we really wanted to be doing is thinking long-term. So recognizing that land use and zoning is fairly protective, it's what over time does the city need to be effective? Like there's tensions here, right? There's different priorities. Housing is absolutely one of them, but it's by no means the only priority. We have jobs, we have complete neighborhoods, we have a sense of vitality and vibrancy and the ability to maybe adapt to new industries that appear over time or different types of jobs that appear over time. We have a huge focus in Redmond 2050 on creating more housing density, more housing types, especially in our centers. We did not expand business park or manufacturing at all. So business park, which is one of the items here, was only a 20th of the land in Redmond. We felt protective of that. And then also just making sure that just the vision that was put forward by the centers, that we weren't kind of clawing that back before we had a chance to see it realized.
Thank you so much, Chair Weston. It does sound like there was a really healthy deliberation, and I want to acknowledge our gratitude. Since you are here, please send our thanks to the entire commission. I know you all have your upcoming workshop, and you'll be back at City Hall tomorrow, so thank you so much for all your work on this. At this time, I will go ahead and turn to the council to see what issues we'd like to discuss tonight. Again, this has been a long road, so we are looking to hopefully come to the end of this deliberation in fairly short order. So let's find out what the issues are that we'd like to talk about tonight. Councilmember Kritzer?
I think one issue which I appreciated the answer to in the matrix, but I wanted to kind of dig into a little further, was actually in response to a question that was raised by Council President Stewart around the impacts of SB 6026. Based on the answer from the matrix, it sounds like potentially with the new law that even the business park could be used for the intention of moving to a different use. So if you could just speak to that and what it looks like, especially since this is currently corridor mixed use and business park, what that looks like with the impacts of this new law.
Sure. Just to recap, Senate Bill 6026 was recently signed into law. State legislature concerns residential development in commercial and mixed-use zones. At a high level, the bill prevents cities from excluding residential areas and areas zoned for commercial or mixed-use development, with some exceptions. Our business park zone generally could be considered a commercial type zone. So with this new law, again, we had just recently taken residential out of the business park designation as part of Redmond 2050. This essentially would reallow that use, because business park previously was also a mixed use zone.
Great. So I guess actually to be clear on my question is, and because part of it seems like the core of the issue that we're looking at here, and part of why they wanted to rezone it to corridor mixed use was to open up the door potentially to residential development. If this went forward and say the applicant were interested in being able to develop residential on this site, is there an issue for them to essentially use that law on the business park? If say we did reject this change, but they could develop residential on the business park and develop residential on the corridor mixed use part altogether, or is there something that would then prevent them because it's kind of two different uses?
So you'll see in the other issues matrix, 6026 comes up again. And I'm just going to jump to that one, if I may, for a moment, not on the screen, but just in concept. I think that the city has concerns about the impacts of 6026 in our business community. And for that reason, we intend to ask the Planning Commission and the Council to add a plan amendment to the 26-27 docket, those are the years we're in now, 26-27 docket to address that. That may end with that land that's currently zoned business park still not allowing housing. So under 6026, business park land would need to allow housing, but we will be exploring with the Planning Commission and with the City Council the impacts of 6026 and how we want to address them so that the vision that we have in Redmond 2050 for those zones being for employment can be maintained. And ultimately, that will be up to the City Council at the end of the docket process. But that's just a preview of things to come.
Thank you. Can I ask one final clarifying question? So, which I do understand that we may be looking at that, and I know our city advocated a lot around this issue, specifically because of some of the issues that our planning commissioner here brought up in wanting to make sure that we maintain certain types of uses within our city, including commercial and business park type of uses. But if that's on next year's docket, let's say just specifically for this parcel or these parcels and these applications, if say we were to move forward with the Planning Commission's recommendation, this particular one, they might still be able to use that law to be able to develop residential should they want to in the current code.
So the city's required to adopt 6026 compliant regulations by December of 2027. And so our business park regulations are unlikely to change until we get to the end of next year's docket process, which would be before December 2027.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, I do see that Councilmember Parsi has the next question. Are there other follow-up questions on this particular topic? Okay, Councilmember Parsi.
I was wondering if there's precedent for this type of decision to have been made before that we should be aware of. For example, kind of in a similar scenario, there is zoning change. Have we allowed that previously or have we not, and why?
Well, I would refer, there was a specific issue in the issues matrix about previous zoning code amendments. I'd refer back to that. Staff kind of did some research going back about 10 years on previous examples there, so. And let me just, what number that is, let me pull that up on the screen here. Yeah, that's issue number 5 here, and these bullet points show some of those proposals. Zoom in.
Councilmember Parsi, I didn't get the second part of your question. Would you mind restating it? Was it just about precedent generally? Okay. Yeah, privately initiated zoning map and land use map amendments have precedent in Redmond.
Thank you. Next question, Councilmember Soni.
First of all, thanks to Planning Commission for doing such deep analysis. I was going through all the comments and everything, so definitely looks like, a lot of work has been done and thought process has been there. One of the major concerns that I saw is like for the job loss. If we are moving with the residential and then the concern is that it's a job loss, has there been any report has been put together in the past, like, how many jobs? There were some jobs that were recommended based on, the square footage, I believe. It's like, but was there any other analysis that has been done in the past that would give us an idea in reality, like, technically how many jobs would be lost? Because if we are going with the commercial and residential, if we allow, if we are allowing a zoning that can allow a residential as well as the commercial, there will be some jobs that's coming back. So considering those jobs into consideration and the job loss, it's like, can we do some analysis or some reporting based on that? I do have a follow-up on this.
So it's a challenging question because this is really a zoning and land use kind of designation. As we noted in the issues matrix and the Planning Commission, doing just a straight analysis, kind of with acreage and kind of regional standards, we came up with about 58 jobs. That's just based on size, kind of thing. But another proxy that we had was the master plan for the Redmond Flex development, which is also was a previously approved development for this site. And that proposed 240 parking spaces. Again, that's not a perfect proxy, but again, that was the developer, the property owner, estimating probably the type of, the amount of jobs that this, the previous development had. So those are really our best indicators, but ultimately it is up to the developer, the tenant, et cetera, the type of businesses and things like that. And as you've noted that, manufacturing type buildings could have certain type of jobs, research and development can have a different kind of jobs, whereas a mixed use development might have similar amount of jobs, but just different types. It's hard to speculate on what those are. So I don't want to over speculate and give a sense that there's some proposal there, because this is not tied to any specific proposal.
Just a follow. But can we mandate, like say, suppose if we approve the zoning, can we mandate to the developer to have commercial? Like, I think that would be my first question. That would be an additional question to ask.
Under the current zoning, I should say, under the corridor mixed use, if we approve the development, we cannot mandate. There is no minimum commercial requirement for the corridor mixed use zone. So it would really be up to the developer whether they want to go with full residential, full commercial, or mixed use under the corridor mixed use designation.
But we cannot mandate. Like, there cannot be a city-specific standard for us to mandate on this. Sorry, I'm asking these.
Not on this particular. Council could approve a zoning change that redesignates with those kind of standards, like such as a minimum commercial, things like that. But then again, the SB 6086, is that the right number? Also kind of changed that dynamic too, so.
2 years down the line, like, December 27.
Yeah, Glenn,
if I may, this is actually an area that I have seen our commissions struggle through and overcome. So I'm wondering if Chair Weston, you could share with us why it is in the city of Redmond we keep programmatic decisions at the zoning code level versus zoning parcel by parcel by parcel. That is something that you have been a articulate speaker on before.
Okay, well, I can't promise articulate, but what I can say is I think this question is fantastic. So this really goes to our first study session, because I think that there was a real concern that our business parks are the small business incubators, and they're very valuable. So we were very concerned about the jobs angle. The information that we got back from staff is basically that we really can't. There's so much flexibility in land use and zoning. We can't get to a point where we can say with certainty, these sorts of jobs will be in one place, or these sorts of jobs will be in another. What we're saying is broadly, as a city, over the next 25, 30 years, we think we need space for business innovation. And we will carve out this much of it here and this. We have different pieces of it. When you look at the land use map and the zoning map around the city, we're preserving that opportunity. But we can't get to the level of saying only this type. And we actually kind of went down the path for a little while of thinking, what if we did? We did that thought experiment. But one of the real values of Redmond 2050 was the simplicity of the code. We went from a really sprawling number of zones and a really sprawling set of uses down to something much simpler. And I think I value that. I think that makes it much more usable for everyone trying to think, what could we do in Redmond? So immediately taking and starting special casing it, I think actually goes against the principles that we were trying to put into Redmond 2050. So sort of embracing the uncertainty a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next. Any further question on that topic? Seeing head shakes. Jeff.
Yeah, I just had one piece of information for the council, and this pertains, I think, to multiple issues, but later this year, we do expect to come back to you with some results from the Southeast Redmond market study that you approved in the current biennium budget. So that's reaching its conclusion, and we will share what we've learned through that.
Cool. We're looking forward to it. Thank you. I think Council Vice President, you are next.
Thank you. And Jeff, that was a perfect segue, because one of the quick points that I wanted to make before I asked my question was if we could pull up the screen that has the map of where this is located, because I would be remiss if we weren't explicitly pointing out that this is just north of Southeast Redmond Park, which took myself, and that's why I'm bringing it back up, because it took myself a minute to think about, because this is a complicated decision for us, because there's the point that, Chair Weston, that you're bringing up about protecting our small businesses, and our business parks are that, and we're about to put in this beautiful park that then could be enjoyed and be a more valuable asset if we opened it up to residential. I'm always wondering what voices are left out at the table, and I'm wondering if we've had conversations with the businesses in that area, or businesses in general. Like, have we talked to any of the business stakeholders?
There's just a brief deliberation on who's going to answer that for you. Thanks for
I can start out noting that we had reached out to the Lake Washington School District, which owns the large property just to the north. And their capital facilities plan indicates a long-term plan for a future high school. That actually question came up at the Planning Commission, and when they reached out, they did not have a time frame for that. It's not in their 6-year CIP, but it's in their longer range plans. Corporations such as FedEx, Genie, Microsoft, those are companies that can't really have a one-on-one conversation about particular land uses. Just can't really get a contact specifically for that, so.
Well, I mean, at Microsoft, I know that we've got a point of contact where we could say, hey, if we were to do this, even in a water cooler conversation, let me float this by you. If we did this, then what would be the impact of it? Or what are your thoughts on that? But we're talking about a business park, so we wouldn't be talking necessarily about Microsoft, because as Chair Weston said, we're talking about small businesses. It's kind of our small business incubator. So if we then go to our small businesses that are in that phase, and we say, hey, so if this space was for small businesses, what's the impact there? Or conversely, if it wasn't there and you didn't have that space. So this way, it's less concept and theory from us at the city level, and then instead going to like, hey, you with the lived experience, what are your thoughts about this?
I'll just add, sorry, I misunderstood your question. I thought you were referring to actually adjacent property owners, because we did include a sign noting that this was a land use proposal, had a public hearing and things like that. So just want to note that before.
Well, and that's what part of the deliberation was about, is I think there's the broader question you were referring to, and then this specific parcel. So I think that the appropriate outreach was done for the specific parcel. The broader conversation, which is around what are we using our industrial, our manufacturing park, our business parks, is what we'll be coming back to the council with as part of our Southeast Redmond market study. And we have been, there's a substantial amount of informational interviews that we've done with small businesses, larger businesses, a lot of the light manufacturing, a lot of the space industry companies that we've heard that have started in Redmond, and then when they get to that larger growth period, we don't have enough land for them. And so that is, again, going back to this balance of wanting to invest a lot in housing, and how also are we retaining industry when land is expensive? We don't have a lot of turnover. And, this coincided exactly with the bill that we have all been referring to, and I think will be interesting, robust conversation in the next year and a half that we're hoping to have Redmond aligned about what we value and have the council aligned with that. And we'll continue stakeholder engagement outside of the Southeast Industrial Study, but I think this will be a good start.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Additional comments on the outreach, that piece that we were just discussing? Just want to make sure we're kind of closing that. Councilmember Kritzer?
Just, a follow-up to Council Vice President's question, I guess for the Planning Commission Chair, in terms of, because I think to the point that we generally don't want to do spot zoning changes, we want to think comprehensively, but I am curious to hear about, if you can share with us more about the Planning Commission's discussion about kind of the potential benefits of thinking about residential in the context of a park below and a potential future school above, as uses, and that kind of, the specifics of that area. Because there is some precedent. I was actually on the Planning Commission when we made the Proctor Willows decision. So it does happen sometimes, and at that time, the council, or the Planning Commission did recommend that, but it is rare. So just curious if you can share a little more of the discussion that went on around the aspect that the Council Vice President raised.
I think one of the things that I noticed when we were having this conversation, especially about trying to get in the specifics of what this could be used for versus, and a little bit the park, but just also a little bit of, is Business Park actually important here, was going back to the historical piece of what happened with the development around the Marymore Center, and just understanding that that used to be one of our core business parks. We went for higher density there with more housing. We lost something there. It got relocated to this particular lot, and then we still want to preserve that. And so I think what we kind of, as a group, and pardon me if I'm not getting the details exactly right, it's been a few months, but it's, the goal there was really to say, okay, there was a historical decision here, a set of them, made by the city to promote the centers, especially with light rail coming in, but we still value what was displaced in those areas. And this is a beautiful place to make sure that we preserve that land use. Even though there could potentially someday be a school, there's no funding, there's no plan, it's held in reserve, it's possible. There could someday be housing, there could be options around this, but it's not, we wanted to make sure that the underlying uses that weren't possible other places because we already grew there, were still preserved here. And I hope that's it's trade-offs. It's not perfect, but it's, that business park felt very important to us.
If I don't mind adding a little data, we have over 100 businesses right now that are currently on our displaced list that we're looking to find locations for. Unfortunately, that is part of the process of growth, and we have invested really heavily in housing, and that's a net positive. And this is where we're seeing turning our attention to some of the consequences of those, and we won't be able to support all of them, but that goes back into the priority of what kinds of industries do we want to maintain and retain in Redmond, and making sure there's places for them to be.
Thank you so much for the conversation. Councilmember Forsyth?
Yeah, thank you. This conversation really helped with my question. I was going to take us back up to a higher level view. I went back to the 2023 decision we made for this project. I was really excited about this decision in 2023 and what the project could have been and some of the early renderings we saw. So I guess my question that I'm not totally clear on from the packet, what changed?
I would refer to the letters from the property owner. So I want to be careful paraphrasing, but ultimately they said that the market changed, they couldn't attract a tenant, and they really wanted to go back to the previous kind of, without recapping all the history, they just really wanted to go a different direction with their development, and that's kind of where the issue became with the business park, because that previously allowed mixed-use development, but then we were in the midst of our Redmond 2050 changes, and there were some dynamics there, but beyond that, I would refer back to the letters that's in the packet and you probably received from the property owner, kind of outlining their concerns about that particular project.
And as it stands, this would be tied to 2050 code.
Excuse me?
As this project currently stands, it would be tied to 2050 code, or is this to the old code?
When you say this project, what do you mean?
Or there is no actual project at the moment, correct? So this would be under 2050.
So the project has an entitled master plan, a vested master plan that's effective to 2030 because it's a 10-year plan. As you know, it was passed in 20. So they have that one option to continue to pursue that development. That's the kind of manufacturing type building. But then whatever the existing code is, they can also put a new proposal in based on whatever the existing code in it is currently, which right now is business park and corridor mixed use. If the zoning changes, they can also submit a project under the new zoning.
Which is
They kind of have two options.
Which is why it makes it so complicated back to your timing, because we will need to come back again as a council and make that determination based on the recent bill that was passed with 6026. So you could see a change again in 27.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for round one? I know there was an additional question here. You had a chance. Anyone else? I'll go ahead and chime in just for round one then and come back around. There's a lot here. There's a lot to consider. But I did make sure I knew what I wanted to do before I came in the room today so that I could also be able to help facilitate the conversation. So here's where I'm at. A year ago when the Planning Commission came here and we had our joint session with them, I actually spoke pretty vocally about encouraging the Planning Commission to be really defensive of Redmond 2050 because we just built it. And we can see from our housing dashboard, we have about 5,000 units total, mostly mixed use, either in production or review, across our city, mostly housed in our centers. We have far fewer land use opportunities to create jobs. And the headlines right now across our region are, we better diversify our economy, or we're all in for some more destabilization. So that is what's top of mind for me. And again, consistency is really important to me. Where I'm landing on that consistency is we just built Redmond 2050. This unfortunate destabilization with the state law is really important and merits, in my mind, a comprehensive conversation about how we want to integrate that new law. And we should say that Team Redmond and members of the planning staff who spent hours and hours and hours of this last legislative session trying to make that bill easier for Redmond deserve a lot of recognition. I think that we should have that conversation about the map of the whole city, not just one piece of land. So I would prefer to do that later. So for the moment, where I'm leaning in this conversation is to accept the recommendation from the Planning Commission and to continue to move forward with Redmond 2050. And while I understand that that is not the decision that the property owner is hoping for tonight, I do intend as best as I can here to get you an answer regardless of what the decision is. So I'm hoping we can do that. I know it's been a long road for everyone. So with that, additional considerations, questions. Councilmember Parsi, you had your hand up earlier.
I appreciate you summarizing the goals and the direction that we want to go, considering the recommendation from the Planning Commission. I just wanted to make sure that, as we make this decision, we also consider the perspective of the property owner as well, since they're one of the stakeholders. So I just wanted to better understand, given that from the materials that I have read, they have followed the process the best as they could. What could this decision, if we support the recommendation tonight, what would it signal to other property owners who may face similar situations? What would it signal to the current property owner, and kind of what considerations do we have?
I'll take a stab at that. I think the signal to the property owner and to others is going to be really the sum total of the discussion of the Planning Commission and the City Council. What I see is a very thorough and deliberate process that's considered many different issues, and I think done a really good job of exploring all of the different pros and cons of this action, and and I don't know how it's going to end, so I don't know exactly what the message is going to be. But I think that I would hope that people would come away from the process seeing that it was very well considered and transparent, and that they feel that they had that their voices were heard and considered.
Sorry, just clarifying my question. I was mainly thinking about, would it lose trust of other property owners potentially, or like other types of kind of considerations that
Sure.
we should have?
I think one thing that's important to understand is that land use and zoning map requests are discretionary. They're policy level decisions. No one comes into that process expecting that they'll definitely get a yes. I think everybody comes in understanding that this is something that's really up to the city council and is going to be reviewed against the broader policy objectives of the city. And so I don't think saying no in any instance is a cause to lose trust in the process.
I would also add that I think in terms of the weighing that's been happening here too, is that Redmond has really gone in on housing. And so I'm not sure that there's going to be a distrust that Redmond is not invested in housing. I think that's been very clear through our process. So I think in this like particular case, I think there'd definitely be some like disappointment, but I think from a values perspective, to Jeff's point, I think there's been a real deliberation and thoughtfulness about how to weigh all of these values.
Thank you for the question. Other questions or direction, Councilmember Prakriya?
How unique is this parcel of land in Redmond and this kind of zoning amendment change? Because, I don't want to fall prey to the slippery slope argument. But if we approve this or if we deny this, what kind of cascading effects could this have for the next amendment that's brought forth and the next one and so forth?
I would potentially refer back to the issues matrix where we have seen different requests come through and that we've had those before, and I would assume that we'll have those again.
Councilmember Soni.
Though I totally support if we have very few lands available for the business park and looking for the long term, we have to preserve some of these business parks because businesses and specifically small businesses will need space in coming time. But one more area that I just want to highlight, it's like, if we do a kind of a comparison between number of residential units versus the commercial and the businesses, I believe it's like, in terms of the physical stabilization, the city's revenue in terms of coming from the residential units is higher. Please correct me if I'm wrong. In terms of the taxes that may come from all the residential units will be higher as compared to coming from the commercial.
I don't know if we necessarily have done an analysis on that. I would say that actually the loss in the number of overall businesses and the industry it is actually of a concern and something we're planning to work on finance because that's a lot of the sales revenue, which is a huge contributor to the city and back to the kind of diversification. And we have a large amount of housing that's going to be going in, but I don't have more of an exact answer for you on that, but we could come back and maybe bring that as a part of the conversation with Southeast Redmond market study with finance. Does that help?
Did you have a follow-up? Yeah, go ahead.
And at the same time, the concerns that I have seen is like the spaces are empty. There are many commercial spaces are empty. So may not be just specific to this particular parcel, but in general, I just want to highlight if there are a lot of these spaces are empty, maybe, we need to come up with some plan. May not be directly associated with the decision here, but if we are seeing that's what is happening in general in our city, it's like, what can be done for that? Because in this case, like the similar kind of cases as they come in future, people will be reluctant for having commercial spaces, and we will be having this discussion every time when this kind of scenarios comes to the table. So we have to ensure that we are also doing taking some relevant steps towards our business community to make sure that, these spaces do not remain empty.
Thank you, Councilmember Soni. Seeing no hands, I'll just respond quickly. Something that's been coming up for me is the difference between commercial retail space versus job-generating business space. And I think there's potential for the paths in front of us to be very different, in a zone like this. So, and retail vacancy rates in Redmond have been low, down to 1% just a couple of years ago. So a lot's going on there. I almost gave you a very cool promotion that's super well deserved, actually. But Jeff Churchill, go ahead.
So one more piece of information regarding taxes, and that is, and I think it goes back to what Planning Commission Chair Weston was saying, is there's not a specific project here. And so it's very hard to assess something like what are the tax implications, because we don't know how dense something would be. We don't know what the uses would be. And so it's very difficult to assess what will the assessed property value be, how many retail sales, what would the retail sales be like. So it's just a very difficult question to answer and to do the comparison.
Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. And I'll just note that actually in the next item on our agenda, it does point out some of the losses that we've had, specifically in the retail goods and services and food and beverage area industry, a 50% loss from 2014 to 2024 of that type of retail space. So, which is, it is significant, and it's different than potentially the uses that were envisioned in the Flex project originally, but still kind of part of this broader conversation. So I've just had that on the mind as part of this discussion. I'll say philosophically, just to weigh in on this, that I do think we should think about as part of this decision is that I appreciate the work we all put into Ribbon 2050 and the intention to want to let the decisions we made there and some of the vision of the balance breathe. I think we also, though, I guess where I come from as we think about decisions like this is that was kind of a really big swing, and the whole idea of having the docket process over time on the comp plan is to make amendments, to make changes and tweaks as needed to be able to because I don't think on kind of the big swing we get on that massive update, we necessarily get every single part of the city right as it's evolving. So there may be some evolving uses. So whether or not we decide to, however we decide to move forward here, I do want to say that I think it's worth us having a discussion like this and to think about whether we want to approve docket items to make changes, because that's what the docket's for. And especially for projects that meet the criteria, it's worth having this discussion. So appreciate that and all the deliberation.
Thank you. We are coming up on time for this item. It would be helpful to know at this time what information could help make a decision, or if you're ready to say what direction you'd like to give tonight, we'll start to hear that. Councilmember Prakrija, thank you.
For me, I'm not ready to, I think, make a decision, but happy to move this forward to a business meeting. I think I just need time. I've heard a lot of interesting philosophical arguments from my colleagues tonight and from staff and the Planning Commission. I think just a little bit more time and I would be ready.
Okay, was there information, I guess I'll leave this. If there's more information that would be helpful other than what was provided in the packet tonight, we'll come back around and do let us know. Councilmember Forsyth.
I came into this with one opinion, and through the conversation, I'm leaving with a different one. I too think I want to still take some time to think about it, but I am ready to move it forward to our next step.
to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation or to?
I'm not ready to say yet, but I'm ready to, I don't want to delay the process. I don't have any more questions. I just want to think about the context of what we talked about.
Great, okay, thank you. Council Vice President?
Thank you. Chiming in along the, and joining council members Procria and Forsyth, where coming in, I was leaning a particular way throughout the conversation. There's some things that I want to further think about and having a little bit more time and like them, nor do I want to delay the process. So I'm fine and I'll be ready when we get to the next step.
Thank you. Other thoughts? I do have a logistical solution brewing, but would love to hear from others if they're ready to move forward, or Councilmember Kritzer?
I think I'm in the same boat as my colleagues. Honestly, this is such a good discussion, and clearly the Planning Commission spent a lot of time on it. And I just want to first just say how much I appreciate the deep thought and deliberation the Planning Commission did on this, and hopefully all the commission members, if they're watching tonight, can recognize that as a council, we are taking this decision seriously, and the applicant as well, to understand of thinking about what's right. Specifically, I think what's weighing on my mind is figuring out what is the right land use mixture overall for our city, and also what is the right land use for this particular neighborhood and this area and the vision. And so I think that's where I'm still kind of grappling with that. Yeah, that's where I am. But I also am fine if we want to put it forward. I'm not sure that I need to ask more questions. We have a lot of information. It's more kind of thinking it through and potentially talking with community members about it.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Soni?
I'm also in the same boat. It's just the location of this particular property where it is sitting. Otherwise it was a no-brainer because we definitely want to have more business park land, but because just the location where it is right now. And as Council President Stewart, you mentioned that we need to look in with a bigger, not just this particular, but looking at from a bird's eye view for an overall, and then make maybe some decision based on that. I believe we should not just rush into just having a consent today, but maybe just get back once, think, and then, maybe we'll be ready for a decision in the next meeting or so.
Okay, so I'm going to make a proposal that helps our logistics. I'm going to say it out loud as it's kind of been brewing through our conversation. Let me know how this sounds. This is slated for action on the 19th of May, which is our second business meeting of May, which means the packets do not get created this week. I was informed just a few minutes before we walked in this room that there actually is 20 minutes available at the Committee of the Whole for Planning and Public Works next week. Council packets for that are created this week. So would the council like to use, and would the chair permit 20 minutes of discussion on this same item at committee next week in order to provide direction toward the second business meeting of May? Mr. Churchill.
We have one additional logistical issue, which is that we need to issue a 21-day notice of potential council action. That's today. So we won't be able to do that, and that's why Glenn said June 2nd. So we have a little more time to get to a decision, which gives us a little more flexibility in terms of which committee in May we might want to bring it back to.
Okay.
We could do that next week, but
Would you like to come back next week, just because the conversation is so fresh? If that was the direction from the council, would you be able to accommodate?
We are willing. We will have to do it without Glenn because he will be out of the office, but we are willing to come back next
I would also ask what additional questions, because I heard deliberation, but not necessarily more questions from staff. So that would be my question there.
Chair Forsyth, what do you think?
I would be happy to put maybe 10 minutes if anyone has any questions that pop up. But what I'm hearing is there are no questions. We just need more time to think. So I'm happy to put like a brief little bit of time if people have more questions that pop up. But I'm not sure that we're in a spot where we actually need to have another touch on it. So that's where I'm sitting.
So if we don't have another touch and we issue a 21-day notice, that's where want to be ready to take that action. Councilmember Kritzer.
Yeah, I'd add, just because I think the clarification is that we have to issue a notice of whether we are accepting or rejecting the Planning Commission's recommendation in order to vote on it? Or can we just put the item on the agenda and then decide in the vote?
We would issue a notice that says that you're going to take action on it. That doesn't need to say that it's going to be yes or no. So I think we would be okay. One thing that would be valuable perhaps on May 5th is if council members believe that they will have had enough time to think about it, you might be able to give us direction on where things might be going. But that just depends on the time that you need.
So to clarify, the action is not scheduled for the 19th as is listed in the packet. It's actually June 2nd.
Correct. And apologies for the packet mistake.
No worries, just we're making it work. Councilmember Forsyth?
So I think we'll maybe add a 5 or a 10-minute touch point. I think it sounds like we can go ahead and move forward with the notice. And council members will have time to, between now and next week, think some more, ask any questions at that meeting, and maybe we'll have a more general idea of how people are going to vote, but we don't always have to know how we're going to vote in advance. So,
No, that is correct. We do not. Let me ask it this way. Is the council interested in using your committee time next week for further discussion on this item, knowing that you probably won't have any additional items unless you specifically ask for them? Or are you ready to have this on new business on June 2nd? Councilmember Parsi.
I would prefer to have it in the committee meeting because I would like to hear the perspective of my colleagues. While I don't have any additional questions myself, I think it would be valuable to hear everyone's thoughts, unless we want to put it in new business and just kind of hear those discussions, but I think it would be valuable to have it in committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Pakria?
It's going to say the same thing, and also just so we can give a staff a heads up on how we're thinking about this particular issue.
Okay.
May 5th.
So 2 in for committee, a willing chair. Anyone else? And a couple thumbs up. So thank you, Chair Forsyth. She will add an item at the end of the existing agenda to have that touch point. Come prepared. You have the packet materials here. If you need additional information of any kind, please contact staff to get that. Does that sound like an overall plan? Does that work?
Just wanted to confirm we're not going to be including any materials. It will just be the title, and staff will be present. Okay.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And Chair Weston, thank you so much for your time tonight and representing the time you already spent at this very table this year working on this issue. Please extend our deepest gratitude to your commission. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that. The third item on our agenda tonight is also with our planning team. It is the 2025 Legislative Conformance, Business Improvement, and Fences Zoning Code Amendments. Introducing this item is going to be, once again, Deputy Director Sarah Fee Allen, and we'll give the team just a moment while we welcome Lauren Alpert and Kim Dietz. Hi, everyone.
Fantastic. You're lucky to spend another amount of time with us here. So we are joined by Kim Dietz, as was shared, and Lauren Alpert, and we have Director Helen online and Jeff Churchill. So Lauren will be giving the committee briefing on the 3 packages, as was mentioned by Council President Stewart, for the Redmond Zoning Code, and staff is seeking direction and aiming for adoption on June 2nd. And I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Good evening, council members. It's great to be back here with you again. I'm Lauren Alpert. I'm a senior planner. So staff briefed the council on this package of code amendments at the council's committee of the whole meeting on April 7th. At that meeting, council members identified a number of discussion topics. These are captured on the issues matrix that was in your packet this evening. To recap, this code package had 3 categories: the 2025 legislative conformance package, the business code improvements, and fences and retaining walls. As a reminder, the 2025 legislative conformance package ensures that our zoning code is consistent with any new state laws that affect local development regulations. So the topics are varied from subdivision regulations, zoning for childcare centers, parking, permitting timelines, building conversions, and it also has some miscellaneous updates. The business code improvements are based on the city's economic development team monitoring business regulations in the city and how they impact business. So those updates included ensuring commercial floor area is provided in our mixed-use development, requiring placement of business open signs when there is, when pedestrian access or businesses are impacted by sidewalk construction or sidewalk closures, simplifying and clarifying opportunities for food truck and pop-up retail courts and PEAS, the publicly accessible enhanced amenity spaces, and also just updating our definitions of allowed businesses uses based on our interactions with businesses, making sure our definitions are clear. The fence and retaining wall updates are also intended to add clarity and consistency to our fence and retaining wall regulations. And so at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Council President Stewart to facilitate the discussion, and I can also pull up the issues matrix for reference.
Great, thank you. Let's see what questions the council has. Councilmember Parsi, thanks for kicking us off.
Yeah, I would love to hear if there's any kind of broad stroke negative consequences with adopting this plan. If there is any that.
With the what? Sorry, can you clarify that? With the what?
With the proposed changes.
I guess I would say that's something we try to unearth through the community engagement and with the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission give a very thoughtful consideration and is recommending approval of them. So they're not specific negative consequences that I can identify tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer.
Can you walk us through on specifically on the fence regulation changes, kind of in practice, what this will look like, especially for those who are fence owners that are out of compliance, when those changes would have to be made, and kind of what, like the potential kind of scale of impact of these changes that are projected?
So my understanding is if you currently have a fence and it's well-maintained and you continue to maintain it, it will not impact your current fence. It would be a legal non-conforming fence. The only way that you would have to come into conformity is if that fence became in such disrepair, it would be a completely rebuilt fence. Or if you completely tear down that fence and have to rebuild it, that would be when you would have to come into compliance.
So if a fence is above the height requirements that are now that are being proposed, but it's well maintained, that an owner wouldn't have to replace their fence to make it lower?
No.
This is just setting the standard for the future. So any new fences that are being built, or to Lauren's point, if it needs to be repaired or comes down in some kind of way, then there's a new standard for setting that up. So maybe in 100 years, they'd all be at the same height.
And just a follow-up piece on this, because I saw that some of the original language referenced this crime prevention through environmental design, fencing regulation. That was taken out, but it does seem like some of the same idea of it, which is essentially, I guess, if you can, being able to see, have more visibility, create safety. Can you kind of speak to the philosophy behind some of these changes in the fencing, as well as I noticed that we took out some of the specific regulations per neighborhood, and some of the thinking behind that?
I think we took the language out just to make it more broad, and that it's not just a crime prevention, it's also a pedestrian and accessibility rationale, which is in line with the Redmond 2050 plan. And we broadly applied some of that the 4 feet fencing was in just select neighborhoods. So you sort of had this double layer of zoning. You had our zoning regulations, and then you had other regulations for specific neighborhoods. So working with staff, we decided to make it more universal just based on the zoning regulation. So expanding that 4 feet fence to those other zones.
Would you permit one more follow-up question? So one of the things that was in the old neighborhood requirements was noting in a couple neighborhoods that new gated communities with security fencing were prohibited. What would be the change specifically on that now for taking that out overall with the impacts of this? Is that generally a prohibition that would then apply across the city?
That prohibition is not repeated in the proposed language, so that would not be a prohibition across the city.
Okay, but are some of the requirements mean that you probably wouldn't end up with additional new gated communities if there were more development?
I don't think there are regulations, and Lauren can correct me if I'm wrong, in the proposed fence chapter that are really specifically aimed at gated communities or that would have the effect of making them less likely. I think what does make them less likely is just with the passage of time, there's less land, there's less large areas of land that would be favorable for that kind of development.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Forsyth?
Thank you. And just, I believe I live in the only quote-unquote gated community in Redmond, and it's actually not gated anymore. So I don't believe we actually have any. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, my screen went away. The main question I had on the fencing, which I didn't see reflected in the matrix, was mostly about the 4-foot height. My concern is from the flip side of safety. I know we're trying to lower it so we can see into things, but I'm concerned about safety for dogs getting out. What kind of safety conversations have we had around that? I realize that this is bringing us into compliance, but I have other more broad concerns when we're lowering fence heights for other reasons. Was that part of the conversation?
We did discuss that amongst staff, and that's why we decided to also keep the 6 foot in rear. And so your side yard and your rear yards could also maintain that 6 feet fencing, so you could still have that extra height. And we discussed kind of alternatives to also fencing, either shrubbery or other things that could kind of give that privacy and potentially keep animals in. But that's why there was that balance between the 6 feet and the 4 feet.
So if I'm inferring from what you just said, if we had a 4-foot fence, could people then put shrubbery behind that on their property line that could grow above that, and that would be legal? Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Soni?
So regarding the administrative lot split, how are we going to ensure that the property owners in the neighborhood, they still have a voice, in some of these decisions, and that we are not going to ignore them completely by just moving it towards like kind of an administrative split?
I think the state has really told us what we can do with administrative lot splits, and that is that they must be administrative. There can't be any pre-decision hearing. So the real opportunity for having input on what administrative lot splits looks like is in the zoning standards, is in what are our zoning standards that are generally applicable to residential development in the neighborhood residential zone, which is what we did through Redmond 2050 and the adoption of the neighborhood residential zone. But the whole thrust of the administrative lot split bill is to make it easier to subdivide property from 1 into 2. And the requirements there's definitely a bias in favor of action and having that happen without a lot of discretion on the parts of cities.
Thank you. Councilmember Prakriya?
Thank you. And this is more of a comment than a question. The legislature threw a lot this year, so thank you for your work in helping to address it. I'm looking at the issues matrix right now, attachment E, particularly the question that Council President had asked about how SB 6026, the ground floor commercial space bill, will affect our code. And I see that, staff will work over the next 18 months to identify code changes needed, policy changes needed. I would just like to request that we be kept in the loop for any of these policy changes or code changes, and particularly how these code changes will affect our North Star of housing supply in the city, because I think that information would also help us, help inform us for decisions we had to make, like the one previously, trade-off between, business zoning or zoning that promotes housing. If we know maybe business is getting diminished by some of the changes we have to make via a bill like this, we would want to help promote them when more zoning changes do definitely come up on the docket. So just would love to be kept in the loop on that.
Just wanted to share that council will absolutely be kept in the loop, and you will get to ultimately make the decision for those choices.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Soni.
So this is regarding the possible historic structures. Just taking an example, suppose if there is a house that's 55 years old, but it is not in the register for a possible historic structure. Is there a process that can help us to identify sooner rather than later, and to keep the process moving, that this can be or cannot be included in the historic structure, so that, just wanted to understand that this should not just end up into a kind of a situation that it will just keep sitting there for long, because it could be a possible historic structure. So.
Off again. There we go. Okay. Thank you for that question. A historic or a building that potentially meets the historic qualities, that can be reviewed by the city or the state at any time. It is, however, required that for that building to move to a level of being preserved, that the landowner consents with that action. And if they do consent, then there is a very clear process that they would work through with our Landmark Commission to receive and review a nomination for landmarking. And once it's landmarked, landmarking does not save a structure from future demolition or modifications, but what it does is it recognizes the characters and the story of that structure. If in the future somebody did want to demolish, there is also a procedure and a public hearing for that process. But in the interim, there are grants, there are programs available to support the maintenance of that building until such time that, that the owner wished to change it.
Sorry, just suppose if the owner wants to demolish and move forward, will the process support and will not put any hurdles just because it was 55 years old?
The historic designation would not put any hurdles in place of that future demolition. It is something that, in some cases, is just an honorary designation. It's more of collecting that information and allowing the community, the public, to have access to the story behind that building and be able to visually see it for a period of time.
Other questions for the council or matrix items you would like to keep open or get follow-up on? Did you have one more, Councilmember Soni? Okay, go ahead.
Next question I have is specifically for the childcare. Now that with the state mandates and requirements, what will happen in the manufacturing zones if the childcares will be allowed in those zones? How are you going to prevent in terms of any environment protection for the children, those will be in the childcare. Will there be any norms and regulations that will control having childcare facilities in the manufacturing zones?
Yeah, so that is one of the allowances that the state included in the legislation, that in an area of manufacturing or industrial, if the city did wish to allow the childcare in those zoning districts, that it could be through a conditional use permit, and through that type of permit, there would be an assessment of the environmental conditions and constraints that could be placed on that property. However, having childcare in areas where people are working is something that is also promoted at the state level, so that women in manufacturing, for example, would be able to have close proximity to where their children are being cared for.
Thank you, and that was a matrix item that I had included and appreciated the response. Any other questions? I'll just go ahead and offer a couple thoughts. Thanks for the great matrix. This was wonderful. Thanks to the work of the Planning Commission as well. This package includes both our legislative conformance and also some annual code maintenance. And annual code maintenance is great because then we keep things. It's like keeping your bedroom tidy, you know. So really appreciate the effort to get this back on a schedule that's going to work well for our city. Deputy Director, would you like to remind us of next steps on this, just to be sure that we're clear?
I'm actually going to turn that over to Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
I think in your packet originally you may have said May 19th for action, but we are pushing that towards June 2nd in light of that 21-day notice. So we're looking to have this on consent for June 2nd.
Okay, any objection to this item going to consent on June 2nd? I'm seeing enthusiasm for June 2nd. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being with us, team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Council, thanks so much for the engagement. The last item on our agenda tonight is Council Talk Time. There is one follow-up item from our retreat that we were hoping to discuss tonight. Before we dig in, are there any brief items for Council Talk Time? Councilmember Kritzer.
I don't know if it's a brief item, but I can do it briefly. I did want to give an update from the Council Subcommittee on Tenant Protections. Is it appropriate to do that now, or did you want to do it?
Sure, that's great.
Okay, great. So our Council Subcommittee on Tenant Protections did meet and review some of the proposals that the council has been receiving, especially most recently from the public, but over time. And we wanted to come back to the council to be able to give an update and also just to reconfirm on the charter as we move forward, since we now have a new configuration of council members. Which also, I will note, I had been serving as chair of the subcommittee since we have a new group. We just elected Councilmember Prakria to be the new chair. I agreed to share tonight's update, but then future, we'll be having Councilmember Prakria give the updates going forward here. But as we kind of move forward, just to confirm with the council on the scope of our charter, wanted to highlight the key issues that we plan to study and then bring some recommendations back to the council on in the time ahead, which we understand to be our charter, which would be to take things that have been flagged since the time that we first passed our tenant protections as additional items to consider, and noting that we have made some additional progress in the work that's happened over the last couple of years, and then to be able to come back to council after working with staff to bring some recommendations of additional actions for the council to deliberate on and consider. So I'm just going to run through the kind of high-level summary of the items that we are planning to work on with staff and then bring back to council, and then wanted to open it up to confirm with council if there are any questions or additional items that anyone believes is in scope or out of scope. So first, and so I'll just run through them. First is looking at fees, such as utility fees, optional fees, pet rent, application fees. Quite a few issues have been raised around this topic, as well as some neighboring jurisdictions regulations around that. Around right of first refusal or continued tenancy, so looking at for those who are already living in housing, being able to have the right to stay in that housing or to renew their lease, especially as well if they're in a month-to-month situation. The right to move, which has been flagged to us essentially since our initial tenant protections. We were thinking about, we added notice requirements if rent was going to be going up over a significant amount. It's been flagged to us by community members that if they get that notice and they find out they're not going to be able to afford the rent, they want to be able to look for new housing and potentially to be able to move sooner than however long that period is. So looking at that, and that is these are all ones that has also been flagged to us that there are examples in some other cities of similar regulation. So we'd be studying that. Addressing retaliation against renters, asserting their rights, which has come up a couple different times, and just general kind of enforcement pieces there. Strengthening requirements for informing tenants about their rights. So this has been something that we just took action on this last year, was to add into our business license regulations that buildings have to post tenant rights in there. We have heard feedback both on kind of city web resources about our tenant protections, wanting to see those be more comprehensive of both city and state rights and have an FAQ, but also potentially formalizing the posting that has to show up so we can look at some of the suggestions that have happened there about how we might formalize that further. And then also the budget development for a housing ombuds position that could follow up on issues that come up around tenant protections. And I think one thing that's been brought up to us is assessing in-house versus kind of more of a contractor model with potentially an outside vendor to be able to do that type of work for the city. So that might be something that would be in the scope of what we would look at as part of those that review. And then, so those are kind of some of the ones that have been coming to us most recently. Also one that, as we were discussing, that had been around since our last review as a subcommittee in previous years, and that had come up to us in over time, was concerns around rent setting software, and the fact that actually King County did pass a ban on RealPage, and just being able to kind of look at concerns raised around that type of rent setting software and King County's recent regulations as well. So those are the topics that we have currently on the agenda to study and bring back to you all, but wanted to open it up first to my subcommittee members to make any comments, and then secondly, if there are questions, concerns, or additions.
Thank you. Any response? Councilmember Parsi? Okay, Councilmember Pakria?
Sorry, I changed my mind there at the last second. I think Councilmember Kritzer covered it very well. I also just want to add that our committee is committed to engaging with the entire community as we consider these possible code changes, these possible tenant protections, and we are committed to hearing feedback from the entire community. I just want to get that out there.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Nueva Camina?
Thank you. I just want to thank the subcommittee for taking on this work and really listening to the renters. And I say that not only as your colleague, but also as a renter in the city for now coming up on 14 years. So thank you for doing the work. Deeply appreciate it on both instances.
Did you have your hand up, Councilmember Parsi?
Yeah, there's a few items that I would love it if the subcommittee could consider evaluating along with the items that you currently are, just in case they're not on your radar, and prioritize it however the subcommittee finds best. One of them is regulating the rate of increase. I'm sorry if you already mentioned that. Regulating who pays for lawyer fees and legal fees and disagreements. I know that some of the terms and conditions that come up in contracts are not negotiable and are somewhat disfavorable to tenants. So that's an area. And then a third one, we're hearing that domestic violence is a top issue for our city. So early exit opportunities without paying kind of additional fees if there's a case of domestic violence. Those would be some of the areas that I would appreciate if the subcommittee could consider.
Thank you. Does a member of the subcommittee want to respond? Councilmember Kritzer?
Thank you. Appreciate those questions, and we certainly can raise those. I do believe in terms of the actual caps on rent increases. I think that is really a state law consideration that hasn't been in scope within the past, but we have actually, one of the things that the subcommittee has looked at has been on MFTE units specifically, being able to look at our ability to be able to regulate the rates of increase there. So that is an item that I believe we actually have as a follow-up from past work on this. So, but I noted this for our committee for those other issues as well, and we can get staff feedback on them.
Thank you. I'll chime in just to say thanks so much for coming back and bringing the list. And truly, our council does receive a lot of community feedback on this issue. From the orchestration and management and ability for subcommittees to succeed, unlike my colleague, I was actually a little concerned that the scope might already be too big. So I'm wondering if we really have focused in on the things that we think that we can make a difference on, or is that part of your study that the subcommittee is taking on? Because I hope that you'll be able to, come forward with some concrete recommendations that we're able to implement, and we're already halfway through the year. So I worry about taking on more than we can achieve. So on balance, I'm curious. Councilmember Prakriya?
I think we definitely want to be focused, but part of our focus is going to staff who has a different perspective than us and trying to work with them to figure out what is feasible to get done. That's why our list may be larger than what we'll actually come back to council with, but this is kind of just like an overall superset right now.
Okay, thanks for the perspective. We do have approved work plans for the staff already this year, so integrating with that, it will be important. Councilmember Kritzer?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if members of the council have particular items, and I summarized really what we've been all receiving in our inboxes from a lot of residents as well. So if there are items that you think are top priority, I think that would be helpful for the subcommittee in being able to do this work. But again, I will say also, yeah, for the listening public, this is our summary of what we have been hearing, and we will be following up on it to be able to then bring back some additional recommendations on what we can do on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni?
Thank you so much for leading this effort. I also want to highlight, when you are talking about the tenant protections, are you considering the big builders and the big houses? What about the single individual houses, which are owned not by people with the deeper pockets, but in these cases, if there is anything that's happening, it's actually also creating a big pressure on some of those landlords. So I am always cognizant of one fact, sometimes to fix one problem, we should not open up another problem. So, is this going to be like, the same policies, same rules across the board? How are we protecting some of them? I'm totally in favor of tenant protection, but also want to think about those small property owners who do not have the deeper pockets.
I guess I'll answer that. I think one of the things that we've talked about in the subcommittee is making sure that we not only spend the time to be able to look at what's been raised to us, but also to make sure that we bring back to council a proposed process for community engagement. So that way we could hear the perspectives from everyone who's involved. Because we do want to make sure that, and I think we heard this when we passed the initial tenant protections from landlords of different sizes, of wanting to be able to weigh in, of thinking about different types of, for example, housing developers, like affordable housing versus other types of housing. And so just being able to be conscientious, and you can see that in our initial tenant protections, that we actually did have some nuances in there for different types of housing, although we also want to make sure that we have some regulations that tenants can rely on across our city. So I think part of this work is going to be making sure that we do lay out a clear and transparent process that allows for us to gather deep community feedback. I don't know if the other members of the committee want to share.
Okay, thank you. So really appreciate it. When I started hearing the proposed charter, my ask was going to be to have you actually send that to the council, or maybe have the new chair to send it to the council in writing. Just it's helpful to be able to see it in writing and to be able to follow along. We have kind of added to it, so we look forward to hearing your updates. It sounds to me like the issues that the council has heard most about, the subcommittee is going to be studying and creating engagement opportunities, a path forward, and eventually studying the things that are going to make the biggest impact from a policy direction. So appreciate the update. Did I get anything wrong about that, Councilmember Kritzer?
Yeah, I guess I would propose just specifically on the questions that Councilmember Parsi raised, that we might start with those as questions and then develop those out. And I might come back for clarification on those specifically.
Okay.
Once we gather a little bit more information, if that works.
That's fair.
Just to avoid expanding the scope beyond what we already
exactly.
had there.
That's fair. Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate the update, and thank you for all the work that you are going to put in. Yes, Councilmember Prakria.
Yeah, and just to follow up, I'm more than happy to get that list sent over to council or just forward the email.
Thank you. Thanks for being the chair. Appreciate it. Are there other items for council talk time? Council Vice President?
Thank you, Council President. Council, earlier, actually for quite a little bit, council leadership has been in communication with city attorney regarding automatic license plate readers, getting where exactly we are on that. So we wanted to touch base to see where, as a council, we were, if there were further questions that we have for legal, that we would want an additional executive session, or if we're ready for open deliberation on May 12th.
I'm going to add a tiny bit more context. Thank you for bringing this up, Council Vice President Wave Kamina. And we have agenda setting coming up this week. The legal risk of litigation has been eliminated, and the final piece that the council needs to deliberate on is regarding the state grant dollars that were used to initially purchase the cameras. We are working to have that scheduled, hopefully, in a study session. I will say that today we have several staff out of the office who are typically helping us to schedule those things, but that is what we are looking to bring on track in May. I saw Councilmember Prakria first, and then Councilmember Forsyth.
I think I personally would like to see another study session, executive session on this, even if it's very short, just because of how important an issue this is. Want to get absolute clarity on how we stand legally.
Okay, just for clarification, you do have further additional questions that we have not asked in executive session. You have questions for legal on that. Great, okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni? Parsi? Excuse me, Councilmember Parsi, my apologies.
I just wanted to say I am ready to vote, but yeah, just.
Okay. Earlier today, council leadership received additional analysis that I don't believe the council has actually yet seen, so that may be part. So we'll work to schedule an executive session for possible continued contract review, as well as make sure that the open session does get scheduled for council to continue its deliberation. Thank you. Other items for council talk time before we go into our pre-planned activity to follow up on the retreat. Councilmember Soni?
I just want to provide a quick update for the East Side Transportation, from the East Side Transportation Committee. So basically, we attended, and then there was a proposal that for adding a line 4, Sound Transit line 4, that was put forward by Vice Chair Zhang, and there was a letter that that needed some modifications. One subcommittee was formed, and there were modifications that were done for that letter. The draft was sent. I did forward it to Mayor Bernie. I haven't heard any concerns from her, and I have forwarded to all council members. It's in your mailbox. You may not have enough time to review it today, but if you have any concerns regarding approval of that, because this is going to be approved in our next ETP meeting, which is going to be on the first Friday for the month of May. Just let me know if there are any concerns so that we can forward it as a consolidated response from the council. It does not need as an approval from our council, but if there are any comments or any thoughts, we are happy to forward that. And maybe Councilmember Kritzer or Councilmember Parsi, if you have anything additional on that, you can also chime in.
Councilmember Kritzer?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up and sharing with the council, Councilmember Soni. I'll just note, I think from my perspective, I would support us voting as a city to sign on to this letter if the council doesn't object, just because I think really from hearing from our neighboring cities and the kind of the goal of the East Side Transportation Partnership is for our cities across East King County to work together. From my perspective, Redmond did get our part of the light rail, and a lot of our neighboring cities of Issaquah and Kirkland, as well as through Bellevue, through other parts of Bellevue, are really looking to be able to have that access as well. And so, and I would also say it sounded like from the last touch we had with the mayor that she didn't necessarily object to us as a city being able to support this letter, even as she may have to play a more nuanced role. I will also note that I believe there was an ETP subcommittee that looked at this letter, and you saw the redlined copy also forwarded to you of some changes a couple cities suggested. And that group that worked it out, I think Amy Tsai had been on, so we did have a touch from the city on this. So I feel comfortable supporting this and kind of standing in support with our other East Side cities on this.
Thank you. Councilmember Nueva Camina?
Thank you. Councilmember Soni, just quick clarification on that when you said first Friday. So we're talking about this Friday. First Friday of May is May 1st, which would be this Friday. So I just wanted to clarify.
No, I think it is the last Friday of the month. My apologies.
I think it's the 8th of May. It's.
Is it in the email?
I don't know if it's in the email, but it's a week from Friday is the vote.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
So we won't have another touch on as council.
Thank you. Appreciate bringing that forward. There will also, on our same topic, different committee, the Sound Cities Association is at the Public Issues Committee next month. We'll be voting to whether or not to take up a very brief, high-level statement. The deliberations on whether or not to have a statement were very brief and truncated. Ultimately, the city of Redmond abstained because actually Mayor Bernie is also on the SCA Board of Directors and would ultimately be abstaining from a vote at the Board of Directors. And so some similar path or the Sound Cities Association may choose not to adopt a statement, but similar nuances happening, and Amy Tsai is involved in all things Sound Transit at the moment. Happy to talk more about that next week during committee reports if needed. Other ideas for talk time before we get into our activity? Councilmember Kritzer?
Sorry, just to get direction on this, does anyone object should the representatives from this council who are on that committee support the letter? Councilmember? Yeah.
Councilmember Parsi?
I just wanted to say, for those not on the committee, not on ETP, would you, to make sure that others have full clarity what they're kind of signing on to, are there any downsides for Redmond that folks should consider?
Councilmember Kritzer?
I guess I would say, I think it's obviously a complex decision. I think what I think is good about this letter is that it's really just supporting this part of the vision. It's not trying to solve for the entirety of what Sound Transit will deal with on its budget issues and the trade-offs, and not necessarily saying that we're against other parts of what it is that they're considering. It's just really, especially emphasizing the kind of sub-area equity and the importance of investing in East King County Transit, which I think is something that, from my perspective, we can get on board. It is obviously a very complicated decision of figuring out how we fund transit in our region and how you prioritize. So I also don't envy Mayor Bernie and the others who are on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys bringing it back. I also appreciated in the draft letter that this isn't a letter that individual cities need to sign on to. Our names are along, this name of the city is alongside the left column, and so we don't have to decide whether or not the city is going to physically sign the letter, and so that helps too with the way that the letter is set up. Really appreciate that, and please continue to bring us great updates from ETP and let us know what we need to know. All right, I'm going to move us on to the planned activity, which is to take a look at the matrix of responses that the council received back from the staff. Councilmember Forsyth, do you have a comment on this activity? Oh, let me introduce it first quickly.
Can you share it? Because I don't have access to the document.
Sure, that's why it was also attached, but I have it queued up here and I will share my screen momentarily because the viewing public also does not have this particular worksheet, but just very briefly, the council held a retreat to identify budget and policy priorities. Those items were sent to staff for initial feedback and review. Some of the items are already in process, some had clarifying questions and the like. So just again, for the viewing public, this is what the items are. I was going to read them, but we're running a little late along on this item, so I will not read them all. But what I thought we could do, council members, we teed you up to bring questions, or if you spotted ideas that were lost in translation and you wanted to call those out so that council leadership can get new responses back, that would be a good first step on these tier 1 items. So what I'm showing on my screen is the combined items for budget and policy that were our tier 1 items. Is there any item that a council member would like to mention? Councilmember Forsyth?
So I'm just going to upfront say I can't get access to this document, and I'm having trouble. I thought I'd be able to just like wing it in this moment, but I'm going to need some time with it. So I apologize for not being prepared for this part of the.
No worries. I'll resend it to you now.
I don't think it's an issue with you. I have the link. It just doesn't let me in.
Yeah. That's okay. Thanks, and thanks for letting us know that you'll need additional time. Are there any other council members who would like to bring up one of the items? Councilmember Kritzer?
I guess what I might say specifically on budget that could be helpful for us as a potential next step would be, now that we all have gotten this feedback, if we wanted to revisit, especially on tier 1, but also potentially on some of these in maybe a smaller bullet pointed list, to be able to look at those and transmit a smaller number on budget specifically to the administration, or set like a date by which we wanted to make a decision to transmit to the administration what we really want to see in the draft budget. I don't know if all tier 1 counts in that bucket, or if we want to kind of have a review again, since it was a very big brainstorm that we had to start with.
Sure, that's definitely part of the process that we agreed to at our retreat. I think this initial activity was transmitted, and what we were hoping to do tonight is get the There are a few items that either were lost in translation or miscommunicated, and council leadership didn't want to purport to represent all of your ideas on our own. It sounds like perhaps we're not actually prepared for this conversation, which is okay. We actually do have, I'm going to call it 10 additional minutes that are still left at the end of the 2PW agenda for next week. So if council would rather have a discussion about how to use committee time next week to take on a similar activity so that we can get more clear, we're happy to do that.
Can I ask? I guess I'm still a little unclear on what the desired outcome of this conversation is.
Yeah, so what we had emailed to the council was to review the tier 1 items and come ready to discuss items that needed fixing or items that you wanted to deliberate. So that was emailed to the council in preparation for tonight.
I understand that. I read that email. I'm unclear if the goal after all of this, though, is that we're going to transmit a smaller list, or kind of what the next steps are if we all don't have any of those particularities to raise.
Yeah, that's something we need to decide as a council. Where we left it off at the retreat was we probably have some more narrowing down to do. I think what council leadership, what we were trying to do is have a first conversation, because I do realize that there has been a length of time since our last retreat. Some of that was getting the responses back. We've also had staffing transition. The council doesn't currently have a legislative coordinator, and this council talk time only comes around every couple of weeks. So it's been a minute, and we definitely have to decide where we go from here, but identifying where here was step 1 of the intention.
Great, so I'll just summarize. My comments is a small bullet pointed list for our next conversation would be helpful. And I can make it for myself, I suppose, but it might be helpful for us to do that. I think the current spreadsheet's a little challenging for us to have the conversation with.
Council Vice President?
Thank you. Just for a little bit of clarification, that's why we had requested just the tier 1. One of the things that we had noticed when council leadership was taking a look at the matrix was that there were some things that we understood in the room that were said one way, but when we took a look at what staff had given us back in the report on the matrix, was that something either got miscommunicated or either by what was on the sticky notes, interpreted. So rather than council leadership making the decision of what you meant, then we wanted to bring back the tier 1s to say, is this correct? Does this blurb that staff came back with, does this actually capture what you were trying to communicate, or are there things that need to be adjusted?
Yeah, so it sounds like we'll have to, would love to hear, we can take this conversation offline since we won't be doing the deliberation tonight or doing the discussion tonight. It would be helpful to hear what resources and on what timeline the council needs to continue the conversation. That way we can just be prepared. Most likely, since we're not clear on that tonight, it probably won't end up in the committee of the whole next week, just to make sure that we're set up for success. Councilmember Soni?
Parsi?
I am so sorry, but you're both asking wonderful questions tonight. Councilmember Parsi, please accept my apologies.
I was wondering if it would be helpful right now. The matrix is a mix of some items that potentially multiple people proposed. So I felt like I had a hard time kind of suggesting a potential fix, given that it was, partially my idea, but also someone else's. So I'm curious if it would be helpful to kind of, are you looking for anyone comment fixes for any topic, kind of any row, or kind of just like, how can I contribute most effectively? I was a little bit unsure.
Oh, sure. And in the future, folks, feel free to give us a call if we're unclear. And I do apologize if that was the case. At this point, I'll just ask the council what you would prefer. If you would prefer to have time to study the matrix and send edits to a unified person, we can do that and do that. Also hearing a suggestion about a bulleted list, we can prepare something like that. What would be most helpful to the council to make sure that we can have a clear list of priorities to go back. Mayor Bernie was in our retreat with us, so we are hoping that there is clear understanding of what the council is looking to achieve and is hoping to see in the preliminary budget and work on as we work toward the preliminary budget. But yes, we will need to narrow down probably some of our priorities and some not, because some of them, when you can look in the matrix, they are in fact already in process and things like that. So that's helpful too. Councilmember Prakria.
Thank you. And for me personally, it's kind of difficult to know what may be missing from the spreadsheet. I lost the word there for a second. Just because I don't really remember what were on the sticky notes on the board. I think maybe most helpful for the conversation if we think, even in our priority 1 items, and I just trust that all the ones we had that we labeled priority 1 are there, because I have no way of remembering that. Maybe our conversation could be focused on how do we narrow this down, rather than did we include everything that we had, because I just have to kind of trust that we did, unless there was something very specific that jumps out in my mind, which nothing did.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how about this? Please take a look at the matrix. Also in the far column, staff created clarifying questions back for the council. So do focus on those. Council Vice President Nueva Comida and I are meeting a couple of times over the next couple of days. So we'll carve out some time to take in everyone's feedback and try to craft a path forward that and get your feedback on it to make sure that we're able to continue the conversation in a way that's most helpful for everyone. Does that sound okay generally? Okay. Any final items for council talk time? Councilmember Forsyth?
I'll just say thank you to Councilmember Parsi for forwarding me the thing, because for whatever reason, I'm blocked out of the SharePoint. So thank you.
I'm glad you've got it now. Thank you so much. And thank you, Councilmember Parsi. All right, with that, we have concluded our agenda, and this meeting is adjourned. Thanks so much, everyone.